regular meeting of Council for Monday, October 4th, 2010 to order. And the first order of business, we'd like to ask if everyone would rise, please, and recognize the minutes of silence in memory of former Alderman Ted Barsby, who served on Nanaimo Council from 1964 to 1967. If you could join me, please. Thank you very much. I just might add, if I could, that Alderman Barsby served the city with great distinction. He was a very highly respected member of the business community and was involved in the city, as I mentioned earlier, in the 60s. But he continued on with involvement right up to the end. And I might just mention that I was at a Battle of Britain remembrance celebration not 2 weeks ago, joined by Councillor Apache and Councillor Johnstone. And at that, it was a Sunday day, and we had a luncheon there at 808 Squadron. I had a chance to speak to Ted Barsby, and still in good spirits and a great man, and unfortunately we lost him the very next day. So it's a very sad thing, and we just want to acknowledge and pay tribute to a man who did a lot for Nanaimo over the years, and he will be missed. Thank you. Could I ask for an introduction of late items, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Delete item 9A, Commission Reports, Parks, Recreation and Culture Commission, Cultural Committee Mandate and Structure. Replace pages 119 to 128, item 11F, Staff Reports, LA 56, Application for Structural Change for Level 2, 170 Skinner Street. Replace pages 139 to 153, item 11G, Staff Reports, LA 58, Entertainment Endorsement for a Food Primary Liquor License for Red Room Grill at 75 Front Street. Delete item 11Q, Unsightly Premises at 131 Sandpiper Place. Add item 16D, Correspondence. Ms. Linda McDonald regarding DVP 156, number 25779 Turner Road. Add item 16E, Correspondence, Mr. Bill Wilkie regarding DVP 158, number 3114 Gibraltar Rock. Delete item 20A, Delegation pertaining to items not on the agenda.
Okay. Could I get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended, please? All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Johnson, did you want to speak to
Your Worship, I wonder if we could please ask your indulgence to move forward the introduction of bylaw number 2010-7081, the sign amendment bylaw, and have it prior to considering the issuance of development variance permit number 156 at 25779 Turner Road. I'd like to make that motion.
Is there a seconder? Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All in favour? Opposed? Carried. You're opposed? Or just a late draw?
I'd rather leave the agenda the way it is, but that's fine.
Okay. So let's move along then and ask for an adoption of minutes as circulated.
So moved. Second motion.
All in favour? Opposed? Carried. Dean, sorry?
And the special meeting.
Okay, sorry, yes. And a seconder, all in favour? Opposed? Carried. And to the presentation. And now I'd like to make a presentation, and At this point, some of us, we had a private ceremony with our own members of staff, current members of council, and former Mayor Corpin and former Councillor Diane Brennan. And we had a chance to speak with Larry privately a few minutes ago. And what I want to do is just publicly explain first by reading the letter that we sent, and then some background, and then we'll make the presentation. On the 8th of July 2010, a letter was sent to the Union of BC Municipalities in Richmond, and it says, in part, as Mayor of Nanaimo, it's my pleasure to nominate Councillor Larry McNabb for this year's Long Service Award. Larry has been a member of council with the City of Nanaimo since 1985 with no breaks in service. I've had the opportunity of working with Larry since being elected Mayor in November 2008, and I know he'd be honoured to be recognized by receiving the UBCM Long Service Award. Your consideration would be greatly appreciated, etc. And we were very pleased when they did decide and honour Larry accordingly. And I'd just like to very quickly run through Larry's background for those that may not be familiar. From the city... Was there a laugh somewhere over there? From the City of Nanaimo, he was councillor, City of Nanaimo, from 1985 to present. City of Nanaimo Transportation Committee to the present time, City of Nanaimo Water Supply Advisory Committee to the present time, City of Nanaimo Athletic Commission to the present time, City of Nanaimo Parks, Recreation and Culture Commission 1985 to the present time, and he sits and has sat for almost the entire time as chair of that committee. For the regional district, he was the regional district of Nanaimo director from 1985 to present, deputy chair of the regional district of Nanaimo board committee of the whole and the executive committee to the present time, chair of the regional parks and trails advisory committee, and the RDN appointee to the Municipal Insurance Association. So we had a chance to speak privately with him, and I know that we are all very, very honored that Larry received this recognition, which obviously is overdue after 25 years. So what I'd like to do is make this presentation to Councillor McNabb, and then if he has a few words of wisdom he wants to share with us, we'll ask him to do so. So I don't know if we're on, but I guess we are. So what I'll do is maybe, Larry, you and I can hold this up together so people are able to see this. Did you want to... Can we see it seated, or do we need to stand for this? Larry, are you okay to stand? Stand. Yeah, I think maybe we should stand if we can. Okay. Okay. So I just want to say... I'll just quickly read this before I turn it over to Larry, and I think Larry would like to say a few words. But it's the Union of British Columbia Municipalities Certificate of Appreciation to recognize the long and faithful service of Councillor Larry Dalton McNabb as Councillor 1985 to the present. The certificate is gratefully presented by colleagues in the local government field, and it's signed by the Executive Director, dated September 20, 2010. And so on their behalf, I'm presenting to you, Larry. Now, this is the time for the few words and then the applause.
A few words. Your Worship, you know I'm not big on speeches, but for the last, how many years, 25 years, it's been an honor, a real honor, to work for the people of Nanaimo. And what we accomplished with the walkways, the trailways, the aquatic center, Neck Point, Lindley Valley, Jones Park, I'm proud of what we accomplished in those years. And you would look at 3rd Street for children with ball fields, soccer fields. They have everything there. It's the street of dreams. And I'm proud to be proud of it. And I know Councillor Sherry's been with me all the time. What's your name, Bill? Bill Holden's been with me all the time. And I'm proud of what we accomplished. And Mayor Corpin was there, and Dan Brennan was there. We worked hard for a better city. And I'll tell you one thing, we have a great city to live in, and I'm proud to say that I was part of this city.
Well done.
Thank you.
Can you get this off my desk, Larry, please? No, I'm just not. I'll just put it over. Do you want to... Want to take a break? Okay, the next presentation is Michael Badry, Wildlife Conflicts Prevention Coordinator, Mr. Ron Houston, Conservation Officer, and Mr. Kim Brunt, Wildlife Biologist with the Ministry of Environment, to provide a presentation regarding urban deer. Gentlemen, welcome. It's been days since we've seen you.
Thanks very much. And if you did see my presentation at UBCM, I'm just going to give a real short recap of what we talked about then, and then Ron and Kim are here to talk a bit more about deer issues specific to the Nanaimo area. So I'm Mike Badry. I'm the Wildlife Conflicts Prevention Coordinator with the Ministry of Environment out of Victoria. And of course, as you guys all realize, the reason I'm here, urban deer have become a big issue, and it's a big issue in a lot of communities, and for a lot of reasons. Deer finding it very attractive to live in communities. There's lots of food, there's lots of shelter, there's no predators, there's hunting and firearm restrictions that sort of reduce people from being much of a threat to deer, and they're taking advantage of those sorts of things. And there's lots of management sort of issues around deer as well. They're an adaptable species, again, being able to take advantage of human settings. There's jurisdictional concerns or jurisdictional issues around, is it the province, is it the municipality, even the federal government has a role to play in deer management. And of course, there's all the public controversy around some of the management options. It can become very divisive, and everybody has different feelings around how deer should be managed. So those sort of things all play a big role in some of the concerns around and how to deal with deer. So our response to that over the last little while was to create this document, a few hundred pages, talking about deer conflicts and management options around deer conflicts as a source of information for communities just to look at. We got the 200-page or so document that goes into great detail around things like why deer are a problem, what kind of management options are available to deal with them, what some of the pros and cons of those different management options are, what some other communities have tried and what's failed and what's worked and how much it cost. All those things are provided in this document in quite a bit of detail to give everybody that needs to deal with this, all the communities, a bit of a background and a place to start when it comes to answering some of the questions around deer conflict issues. We also had it summarized into a much shorter document for people to look at and just get a feel for what it's like. And then there's some recommendations that come along with that. And the recommendation is basically that the community sit down with a broad group of stakeholders from that community to talk about the deer issue, to look at what management options are available, what's going to be effective in that community, both from managing the conflict issue, our side of it, but also from the social side of it, what people in that community are going to find as acceptable management options for deer, and come to that kind of a consensus sort of management strategy that then we'll be able to implement without a whole bunch of controversy, hopefully, that we see in some of the other issues around conflicts with wildlife in urban areas. So really quickly, what we see happening is the community will be leading these sorts of committee that will look at all of these issues and develop this management strategy. Ministry of Environment is going to be a key player on those committees. There'll be full-time staff that sit down and be our full-time members of the committee, technical staff that'll come to deal with certain questions and issues, provide advice, provide guidance on a bunch of these different options, and then hopefully once there's a management strategy in place, an agreed upon management strategy, be there to help implement some of those as well. But of course the big question is the resources around doing that, and of course the province doesn't have it, you don't have it, so a big part of what the committee has to discuss as well is where are the resources going to come in order to implement those strategies that are being that are going to be brought up through this process.
I might just ask, if the province doesn't have the money and the city doesn't have the money, who does? You're going to suggest that's something that can be discussed, but what are the options?
Well, some of the options aren't going to be that costly, right? I think a lot of this stuff's you guys are already talking about a bylaw. Well, that's something that can be done without a whole lot of cost. And things, the farther you get is up the scale of deer management, the higher the more it's going to cost. And that's one of those things that'll have to get discussed. If that's going to be a choice, one of the things you have to decide is, can we afford to do it? So it'll just be one of the factors to be considered when you're dealing with things.
Okay, I have a few questions. Councillor Johnstone.
Sorry, Your Worship. I was going to ask the same question about resources, but in next year's budget, is there a likelihood after the big outcry at the UBCM, and you kind of got beat up on by a lot of the municipalities, but it seems imperative that the province comes up with some resources to help us manage this?
I would love to say there's going to be resources. I don't really have much control over that. From what I'm hearing, it's really, really, really unlikely that we're going to be seeing more budget cuts before we're going to see anything coming our way. So at best, I would say we're at least past this next year before we'd see anything available, and even that's a bit of a guess. And it's not just deer. You know, of course, there's bear issues that we don't have resources for communities to help to resolve some of those too. So I'd be surprised if we saw resources over the next year.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for your presentation. You mentioned that the three levels of government, municipal, provincial, and federal, to some extent, share the responsibility. Is this equally shared? Is anybody taking the lead? Or
well, we're asking the communities to take the lead on developing the strategy, right?
So the neighborhoods, the people of the neighborhoods to take the lead?
The people, the businesses, the municipal government, all stakeholders, non-government organizations, provincial organizations. These committees, the vision of these committees is that they're going to be represented by all sort of stakeholders that are within that community. You're going to get all sorts of viewpoints. People are going to come to that table to sit down to talk about what their sort of interests are as far as deer management is concerned, and hammer out sort of what's going to be the best strategy for that community in order to deal with that conflict.
And is it reasonable then to assume that your support of this from your wildlife conflicts prevention department will be at the table?
Well, I'm the only wildlife conflict prevention person in the entire province, but what we'll have at the table are local people from the ministry, people like Ron and Kim that are from the area. You'll have biologists and you'll have conservation officers available to that committee that are, very familiar with what the concerns of the community are, and also what some of the social issues within the community are, to provide that kind of technical support.
So then it's reasonable to assume that those people that would be delegated that responsibility with the other stakeholders at the table will champion such a direction?
I'm sorry, you're asking who will champion it?
Yeah, will those other members, Ron and Kim champion such a committee structure?
They will be involved, in the committee. As I said, both will probably have a full-time person that's coming to all, and plus you'll have the ability to bring in ministry people as required to deal with specific issues. Right. If you have a disease issue, we might be able to get our provincial vet to come in and talk about it. You've got a permitting issue, we could have somebody from the permit bureau come in and discuss that. And they'll also have access to those people so that they can take questions to them and come back to the committee with those kinds of answers.
Ms. Better, we've got some other questions, but I was just going to ask, is Ron and Kim Brunt, are they going to be making a presentation as well, or are they just here
I think
as
just
resource?
speak a bit about specific issues if you guys would like to hear about sort of the Nanaimo specific.
Well, don't back away. We've got more questions for you
stick
first.
Around.
Okay. So before you leave, we've got, I'm just curious about their role in this thing, but we've got questions from Councillor Kipp, Councillor Holden, Councillor Sherry, and Councillor Padgey.
I hold my questions about all three of them.
Yes, same here.
Okay. Councillor Padgey, are you happy with that too? Mercy. Thank you. Hi.
So my name is Ron Hewsome. I'm the local supervisor and conservation officer here in Nanaimo, and I guess what I'm bringing to the table is 21 years of experience in the conservation officer service right here in Nanaimo. So I'm very familiar with the geography of the area. I'm certainly familiar with the problems with deer, and I guess tonight I didn't come here with anything really prepared other than being prepared to answer questions, and I'm sure you'd have some. I just wanted to quickly scope out what would be the function of my role. Is from the regulatory end of it, I have a lot of understanding of how regulations work, how potential bylaws may be shaped in order to be functional if you were to consider that as one of your options. So that would certainly be a role that I would provide as far as any kind of committees that are being put together that way be considering bylaws against feeding wildlife or feeding deer. I also have technical expertise in the management of deer, handling of deer physically. The two things that we come into contact with deer with in the conservation officer Service are always response situations. We get calls related to deer being injured, and it's more often than not, about 95% of them are vehicular accidents, and we're essentially brought in to put deer down. To give you some scope of this, of how many calls we may get, I quickly went through and scanned out in 1 year, in the last year, how many deer we actually dispatched. And I did some very quick data, and I won't bore you with it, but we dispatched in Nanaimo City last year 30 deer, Nanaimo City proper, that were hit by vehicles. Of those 30 deer, 50% of them were in the Hammond Bay area. So we have an acute problem area in the Hammond Bay corridor, and they were adjacent to that corridor. So half of those deer were hit by vehicles on that road. We also get a fair number of calls, and I looked at it, and it was 16 calls last year related to deer in stress, caught in fences, caught in netting, where we actually had to physically go out and mobilize the deer, cut them out of the netting or remove them from fences, and maybe, much to the chagrin of everybody here, release those deer back into their environment, i.e. the city limits. And so that's what brings us into interaction with the deer. We also have a fair understanding in dealing with the public on a lot of public complaints, site-specific, as to what types of methodology as far as preventative measures the public can take with respect to deer. There is some technology out there that will allow people to better protect their own property by way of netting and types of plants that are less deer attractive, that are out there that I've myself employed. I live in Stevenson Point. I have a beautiful yard full of trees, full of plants. It looks very nice, and I have no deer issues. I do a lot of preventative work in advance of that, knowing about deer habits. So we can bring that to the table. So my role is really, if a committee is established, to provide a lot of technical experience and knowledge with respect to deer. If there's any questions,
there's a few. I just would like to ask one, maybe two. The first one is that the feeding of deer, and we're looking at the possibility of passing a bylaw that would prohibit having people do that. But my question is, in your professional opinion, having all these many years' service, I mean, is the feeding of deer going to habituate them to a given area where there is food, easy food to get? I mean, in your opinion, if we did pass the bylaw and if it was imposed, what degree of success? Is this something that would be very successful, moderately successful, or not successful at all?
It's a question that's so speculative I really wouldn't want to comment on. What I can comment on is I absolutely can tell you without any doubt whatsoever that we know that there's acute areas where they are being fed, and there's huge deer concentrations in those areas, and we get lots of deer hit by vehicles in proximity to those areas. We draw some correlation there, and we know that these feed stations are bringing deer in. There's unnatural numbers of deer in those particular areas, and they're involved in traffic accidents more frequently than elsewhere. We have a lot of experience with regulations around not feeding wildlife. The provincial government, although it has no ban on the feeding of deer, does have regulations with respect to the feeding of dangerous wildlife, namely bears, cougars, and wolves. And we know how those regulations work, and they've been very, very effective. They're site-specific, and they are approached from two perspectives. One is we have a regulation that says you cannot feed wildlife, namely dangerous wildlife, and we also have a regulation in place that partners with it that says you cannot leave food where it will attract wildlife. They have to go hand in hand, because people will say we're not feeding them, but food's being left for them. So we have an ability to issue orders that tell people to remove that, and it's been very effective with respect to dangerous wildlife. That's some of the information that we can bring to bear when you're considering those type of regulations and how they may be applied.
And my last question, and then we have four more councillors wanted to ask, but is there an equal increase in the number of predators in the area, traditional predators of deer that's been brought in, or is just lots and lots of deer and the predator numbers are consistently low?
It's a real imbalance, and what I can tell you is that, out of personal experience, we've run the Lindley Valley Corridor, is what we call it inside the COS, and that's the green belt from basically Stevenson Point all the way over to Dover. And that green belt has a family of cougars, or a number of cougars in there. They've been there forever. And we've run dogs there. We know they're there. And they've caused, which is very, very interesting, which is a really unique situation, they've caused no problems to the public, as we have had in other areas such as Nanoose and Beachcomber, where we have cougar populations that will come in and start predating upon house cats, dogs from time to time. We don't have that type of conflict. That tells us we know we have cougars, we have a huge deer population. They're effectively working those deer populations, obviously, not causing us the same problems as we get elsewhere. So we don't have problem cougars in the areas. We do have a population of cougars there. That's their only natural predators other than vehicles.
Good point. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. the previous speaker I heard in Whistler too, and I appreciate the fact that it is a local problem, but of course we look for partnership. I didn't like the idea there when he said we got to hammer out a situation, because that makes me think of something different, an apple and a hammer. Are these deer edible?
That would be a question that maybe you could put to Kim. He's a biologist, and he would be better served answering that one.
Because we harvest a lot of different foods. I mean, fish, a lot of different things. And I'm just wondering we have rabbit problems, geese problems. Do we harvest it? Is it capable? Will you give us that type of information? Because I have a couple concerns. Predators will come, and as the prey climbs, so will the predators. And when the prey goes, or the predators have no more prey, they'll turn on to other things. And there's cougars in our community. They're all over the place. And it might bring other levels of cougar or bear or something more into it, because there is more. But I think the partnership thing is the big thing. And expertise is one thing, but making a decision and putting it to committee. And we've seen this problem coming for years. I mean, it isn't new to Nanaimo. But another one, I heard, and we had information that 30 deer a month were getting killed by cars. You say you dispatched 30. Was that including all the dead deer you found, or you dispatched 30?
That is only ones that the Conservation Officer Service actually attended and put down themselves and removed. We don't pick up deer that are found dead. So there's other groups, the RCMP attend and dispatch numerous deer. We have deer that are hit and killed that are picked up by city employees, etc. But that's just the CO service.
So again, our system of working together, we're not even certain of the number, but we've heard from ICBC. I mean, that's a terrible way to cull the animal right now with cars and feeding them. I appreciate your input, and hopefully we can get something quickly figured out on this. Thank you.
I think the figure, maybe Mr. Churchill might have more figures on it, but I think the figure is something like 200 a year that we're doing. Did you want to comment?
Yes, there have been months, several months when it's been at 30, but the average a year has been over 200 for the last 3 years of dead deer that are picked up. Those don't count the ones that have been hit by cars and gone off into the woods and died, and also it doesn't take into account those that are injured and continue to live.
Or the ones that are dispatched by
the RCMP or the CO service.
Yeah, okay. So it's well above 200, presumably. Councillor Sherry.
Well, Mr. Chairman, to the delegation, you say there's no regulation under the BC Wildlife Act of not feeding deer.
That is correct. Okay.
Now, if it's brought to your attention that individuals are in fact doing that, are your department prepared to go and have a discussion with those individuals, explaining the ramifications of what they continue?
We operate from an enforcement mindset. If we have a regulatory piece of legislation that allows us to be on someone's property to talk to them, we operate in that area. We don't go into areas where there simply aren't regulations and try to convince people or talk to people and talk them away from a particular behavior. We want to know that there's some legislation that backs us up, that when people tell us to leave, we can actually do something about it. So the short answer is no. With our workload, no, we wouldn't be doing that.
Okay. Now, you see, in your original presentation, you indicate if they're harmful, or like a bear or a cougar, the possibility of attack. Okay. When one sees on the television, I think it was in Vancouver, where there's a deer went after a dog, and the people ended up with an expensive vet bill to rescue their dog. You don't class that as invasive?
If we received a call regarding aggressive behavior by a deer, and we've had those where deer have actually stood people down in their driveways, we do attend those, and those deer invariably dispatched, and I've done it myself. So where there's a direct public threat, where the deer is challenging people, charging people, often happens with bucks in rut, and they get very territorial over their area. We do attend those calls rapidly, and we dispatch those deer.
Okay, well, maybe it's not on the property, but somebody's walking on the roadway adjacent to the property that creating the problem by feeding. Nothing to be done.
Unless there's some interaction that indicates that the bear or the deer are acting aggressively, we wouldn't attend.
Thank you.
Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. If I might address my question to Mr. Badri. I empathized with you last Thursday at UBC. You certainly got the wind from the front. My question to you is, are there any examples of what you are suggesting we do, that is to form a committee to try and find solution? Is there any example where municipalities have succeeded without the funding that we think we are due?
Well, we've certainly got a few examples in the document itself, and I have a couple of other papers I brought along that talk about the whole idea of this human dimensions of wildlife management, where they look at these community-based models to, and the papers I bought were actually specific to deer conflict, that have shown that that has been the most effective way to get to solutions within communities.
Okay. Second question would be, we heard from some people of municipalities, North Saanich came to mind, where whole crops disappeared because of the deer. Is there to be a different approach to those rural problems as opposed to the ones that we have here?
Well, the approach, I think you have more options a lot of times when you're in a more rural setting, because there are these kinds of lethal options. There may be hunting opportunities within those, and I talked to a fellow afterwards, after that presentation, that said that they do have First Nations people that do come onto some of the properties and are able to harvest deer and do use them locally in the First Nations communities. So it opens up some of those options, because the public safety issue and the firearm restrictions in the rural areas, give you a bit more flexibility to do those sorts of things.
And the final question, Mr. Baldry, is I came away disappointed, like anybody else at Whistler last Thursday, partly because I really started to feel that the message that all these municipalities are sending, the message is not being delivered. In the sense that who hears us? Do you have input into the ministry? And you say, this is what I hear. What do we do to emphasize and to reinforce that while wildlife is a provincial jurisdiction, there's some money responsibilities that come with that?
Well, I mean, again, I point to the analysis that we did and released just a couple of months ago as evidence that we are listening and we're trying to come up with some solutions, but we're limited on what we can do, right? I mean, this was the first step, and now we need to work with the municipalities to continue on with it.
Thank you.
Councillor
Oldham. I appreciate the attention that you're paying to this, and I guess the one, the Nanaimo councillor that did not attend your presentation was at another one while you were presenting, I guess. I'm interested, though, after the committees have been set up and the discussions have taken place and the requests for funding have been turned down and so on, do you have specific advice for residential homeowners? Not on the issue of deer being killed on the roads, that's a different issue, I think, and feeding is obviously wrong and we should simply prohibit that. But what about people trying to protect their properties? Your colleague said that, in fact, I was kind of directing my question to you, that you've got a property in Stevenson's Point and that you don't have any problems with deer. Is one of your answers deer mesh, for instance?
Absolutely, and there are some things that you can do now, without getting into a lot of detail. When deer are starving, they'll eat anything, and they'll go through anything to get it. But there's a lot of things that you can put into place that will avoid a lot of the problems. I've applied them myself. And so when we consider looking at some kind of relationship where we're going to try to establish some kind of committee possibly to deal with the issues, that's where the technical advice can come in. Part of all of this process can be a public education campaign, and that's significant, where pamphlets can be handed out, door knocking campaigns can go forward. There's volunteers out in the community that will do that. That can be organized, where you go out and provide this kind of advice to people. A lot of the calls that we receive to our call center and through the Conservation Officer Service is people looking for simply that advice. How do we keep our deer out of our yard, make it more deer proof? What type of fence works and doesn't work? What kind of plants should we be planting for that are more deer resistant than others? And as I say, I dropped into Stevenson Point 14 years ago, and we built our home and planted for deer because they're everywhere. We all know where Stevenson Point is, and I've had no issues because of how I set my property up. It doesn't mean it's 100% foolproof, but you can do a lot of stuff to protect your property. And that could be part of the public education component to this whole process.
Well, if I could just follow that up a little bit. I mean, obviously there's ornamental plantings that are more or less deer attractive, but there's also some things that people want to have, even though they may also attract deer, like fruit trees and vegetable gardens and that kind of thing.
Right.
So, are you able to put that information out fairly rapidly? Do you have to wait for a committee before you put out that kind of advice? I think that's what people are really looking for. And when they call us, of course, we don't have the answers.
Yeah, that's a good question. We have information on our website, nothing specific to deer. And that might be something to consider as some of the deer-resistant plants that are out there that can be put in. I'm sure there's information on the internet. There has to be with respect to that. Maybe Kim could comment on that. And simple things like junipers are a classic example. You don't see your rhododendrons and your junipers being eaten by deer very often.
Just in the news. The rhododendrons there, apparently.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a couple more questions, but Mr. Churchill, do we have copies of all the documents they're referring to?
Yes, we do. It's available on the web, and we do have
and
copies
we have copies
as well.
ourselves. Okay, Councillor Beswick.
Just a quick question. If we're losing 200 or 300 or 400 or however many deer on an annual basis, is there any tracking mechanism of the reproductive cycle? Is there an epidemic? Is it getting worse and worse and worse? Is there more and more and more every year? Are we, can we track that at all? Is there any way that you can measure that?
We haven't done any studies specifically, and it was something that I mentioned, and I can't remember who I was talking to from the city end of it, is that we really haven't done any census data on what is the population, no trending models or anything. The ministry certainly hasn't done that with respect to deer. What I can tell you is after 21 years in Nanaimo, the deer population is increasing, and it's increased a lot. I know that from personal experience and observation of deer with 2 fawns that live to full maturity. Lots of unusual circumstances that have occurred over the last year, and it's primarily a function of the amount of people that are moving to Nanaimo, bringing in lots of food sources, and deer populations are getting very, very big as a result of that. Kim, you may want to speak to that more specifically.
Okay. You're okay. So we can't let Mr. Brunt off the hook here. I mean, surely there must be something that you wanted to say to us. And
Thank you. My name's Kim Brunt. I'm Senior Wildlife Biologist with the Vancouver Island Region of the Ministry of Environment. I understand we've already exceeded our time limit, so I won't get into many specifics at all, but just a couple of comments about things that came up in the previous discussion. I understand the no feeding bylaw that you may be considering later also includes rabbits. I just wanted to throw in that we have no native species of rabbits on Vancouver Island. All of those that are here are introduced and considered to be invasive alien species, and so we would certainly support also the ministry at any kind of any moves to not continue feeding that species as well. And in general, the no feeding bylaw I think is something that the ministry can strongly support. Some of the questions came up before. What would happen if they weren't fed? I think in general it's going to disperse those deer and maybe not concentrate those issues so much in the few key areas. The neighbors, the folks we keep hearing from are typically neighbors of individuals who are feeding deer and will have 25 to 30 deer on their front lawn. Well, of course, they don't limit their destruction to just that individual's property, but they spread through the whole neighborhood, and you get a lot of upset people about it. I think a no feeding bylaw would go a long way to kind of dispersing those populations so that the impact is not so centered on one particular area. A couple of other cities that have already implemented no feeding bylaws, and also others that are considering it, have already put in place urban deer management committees. We're having the inaugural meeting of our local deer management committee for dealing with urban issues this Friday, and I understand a couple of council members will be sitting in on that as observers, so that's a good step forward. Some questions came up about how many are there. That's one of the issues we'd probably like to have a little bit of a look at. It quite frankly, really doesn't matter whether there's 1,037 or 622. There's clearly too many deer that they're intolerable. They've created so many issues that the current population is intolerable, and something should be done about it. I have some notes about some of the biological issues related to feeding of urban deer that I can leave with the staff if you're interested in them. But I just wanted to leave it at that, I guess, with our time, and perhaps we can answer some questions.
Okay, I don't see any further questions this time. Oh, you do? We have one here.
In attendance at that roast that you had to put up with, it was brought forward from a community in the interior that had, in fact, already completed a cull. What did the ministry have any involvement in that cull, or what was the process?
Sorry, could you remind me what community was that talked about?
It was up in the Cranbrook area that said that they gone through and did a cull, and they timed it so that it would be in the morning and afternoon while all the kids were at school, so it wasn't in the light of what was going on with the children. So
yeah, my recollection of that he was talking about that's the way they would implement a cull. I don't believe one's ever taken place. There certainly hasn't been one that's ever been permitted or that the ministry has been involved in.
So then, if there was one to take place, there would be the necessary permitting that the ministry would have to adhere to prior to that.
Yeah, we would certainly have to go through that process and look at issues like public safety, animal welfare, and how they're addressed in any kind of a process like that.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no further questions. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. We went over, a little over time, obviously, but it's a very, very important issue to the community, and there's going to be a lot of people very much in favor of a cull, which I am not, incidentally, and there's an equal number of people that want to feed them year-round. So a solution, hopefully, will be found, and we thank you for your time. And I also want to comment on the fact I admire the way you stood up to what I think was a considerable amount of abuse, and you... at times, you almost seem to enjoy it, which made me a little nervous. But anyway, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your time.
Move receipt of the delegation.
Seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll go into the delegations pertain to agenda items. And Ms. Harrison, are we going to move forward the one that Councillor Johnstone mentioned earlier at this point? Councillor Johnson had brought up. Okay. So the very first item we have is Mr. Doug Bromwich. And welcome, sir. You have up to 10 minutes. Actually, we've started the timer already, Doug, so you want to walk a little faster if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you. Doug Bromwich, 711 Poplar Street. First of all, Councillor McNabb, congratulations on your 25-year contribution. Fantastic. So
well said.
Congratulations there. Mayor and Council, thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to voice my concerns regarding this sign at Longwood Station that's before you tonight. For the record, number one, I sit on the advisory design panel. And number two, I played a lead role in the creation of Longwood community and the Longwood Station. When we first came to this town 17 years ago, it seems like yesterday, but Nanaimo was a series of loosely connected shopping centers. It had a bad reputation, and it was the beginning of urban sprawl. And that was a concern. We heard about it. I think a lot of people felt that way. The community over that last 17 years has spent thousands and thousands of hours, many thousands of dollars, developing community plans, neighborhood plans, policies, guidelines, and bylaws to direct development and growth in a prudent and viable manner. I think they've spent a fantastic amount of time, and I think it's been a great journey. So tonight is my opinion that this proposal to vary the sign bylaw goes against most of the intended values and anticipated outcomes of those plans and policies. This is my opinion. It is also my opinion that this proposed sign is, one, completely out of context, two, completely out of scale, three, against most good urban design principles, completely excessive response to an individual tenant's request. And it's actually, from my point of view, it's an affront to the long-established Longwood vision and our commitment to Nanaimo. And also, the biggest thing that I'm concerned about, it sets a very, very dangerous precedent. I can only imagine how many more tenants in malls are going to come to you asking for the same approvals. That's my fear. Further, I think if I was before you tonight seeking approval for Longwood Station that included a sign of that magnitude, I would not be successful. I think you would ask me to go back and rethink the sign proposal, work within the bylaw, work within the rules. I think it's regressive to redesign signage and rethink these things that have been worked out with staff and council over the years, to change something of that magnitude at this point in time. So tonight I ask you to reject that application and request that you request the applicant to seek a more creative and appropriate solution to his challenges. So I thank you for the time. I feel passionately about this, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Bromwich. I see Councillor Paggi has a question.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Bromwich. I'm very glad that you did not look at me once during your presentation, because I think, we're on the same side. There is an excellent presentation. All the reasons that you give concur with mine, and I just hope when this bylaw comes up a little bit later that we can make some sense of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Beswick.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Bromwich, for your presentation. May I just ask that would your opinion be different if there was not the three variances that was originally requested, that being the height, that being the neon, and that being the distance, or I'm sorry, the two pylon signs on one property, and because you made a statement that they worked within the current bylaw and guidelines. So would you be opposed if, in fact, it met within the guidelines but was LED, etc.?
I am personally against LED signs. I think they're a problem we're going to have to deal with in the future. I would not begin down that path. I think if we work, there's good reasons why the bylaws are there now. There's good reasons why we tried to work within those bylaws, and I think good design and creative solutions can solve a lot of problems. Bad design and bad solutions will also create huge problems.
If I may, Your Worship. So you mentioned that 17 years ago, has technology somewhat provided us with different opportunities that for the next generation or the next decades to come?
Absolutely.
And would you prefer, if I may, then, if you're dead opposed to LED, then nobody is ever going to win that argument with you. So do you prefer the pylon signs that are static backlit illuminates, or just simply wood with plaster on them hanging from corners and outdated and looking very appealing and attractive?
None of the above, other than I think a good sign design and a good application will solve a lot of problems. I don't think sign bylaws that we've worked with did us any harm. I think we were creative. In fact, we left a lot of the opportunity off. We wanted to underplay the situation. And the Longwood Station was at that time in a town center. Town centers had criteria we strived to meet. Visibility was always an issue with the tenants, but it was our policy not to let an individual tenant rule the design for the whole shopping center. And that was absolutely the case for Boston Pizza. They have a prominent corner, a prominent building, and this was discussed right at the very outset.
And just my last question, if I may, Your Worship, to the delegation. Do you find the sign on this building that we're in offensive?
No.
Thank you.
Councillor Oldham.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I just wanted to ensure that I'm clear on this. You're speaking about LED signage in general, which concerns the bylaw that we are now going to deal with before the variance on Longwood Station, and you're speaking against the Longwood Station sign in particular.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
one and the same.
Yes. Okay. Do you see a way in which the use of LED signage could be done creatively and tastefully?
Yes, I do.
So do you think we should allow them in some manner then, and not just throw away this whole LED sign bylaw?
I think you have to deal with the whole issue from the start to the end. I think the reality is that whole thing needs to be understood far more than it is now. I think you need to look at your bylaws now, and you need to look at how the goals of the community plans are going to be achieved. I'm not against progress. I just think you just can't throw that out and say, here it is.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Patchy.
It's okay, Your Worship. Mr. Bromwich answered my question.
Okay. I see no further questions, Mr. Bromwich. Thank you very much for your point.
Move receipt of the delegation. Second motion.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next delegation is Mr. Thomas Loza, Unit 175 Front Street. Is Mr. Loza in attendance? Here we go. Welcome, sir. You have to 10 minutes.
Good evening, Council. My name is Thomas Loza. I'm from the Red Room Grill, and I am asking that Council recommend to the Liquor Board that we are allowed to have a audience participation endorsement for our restaurant. And having said that, audience participation means that our clientele are allowed to participate within the confines of our restaurant by doing fundraisers, dinner dancing, just so they're able to move among the room from the stage to seating. So as it stands now, we have an entertainment endorsement, which does not allow our customers to even clap almost. And that's how archaic the liquor laws are. So I don't really have a big speech prepared, but I'm certainly willing to answer any questions that Council may have for me.
Okay, I just have a question. Have you taken the time to check with the residents around you and other businesses around you to see what their opinions are?
I do believe that the opinions were all good. I talked to...
were there any opposed then? I'll rephrase
it. Not that I know of. I'm not aware of anything that was opposed.
Okay. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Evening, Mr. Loza. You have a food primary liquor license, correct? How often will this open mic event occur?
The open mic is once a week, and we've been doing that for about 7 years. Unbeknownst to us understanding that we had the entertainment endorsement that we've always had, but due to a issue with the liquor board, we had stopped doing the open mic nights on Wednesday nights.
Okay.
But we do hold book clubs, which is also, we've held back on doing that as well. We have a big book club from Nanaimo with all the poets and script writers and whatnot that come in once every Monday for dinner and book reading. But that again is audience participation. You have to leave your seat to go to the stage. And this is is costing us about $10,000 a month at minimum not to do this. So it's quite important and crucial to our business that we have this go through.
Okay, Mr. Loza, I might just ask myself if I could. You say you've been doing this for around 7 years.
Yes.
Have you had any complaints or concerns in the neighborhood at any time during that 7-year period?
You yourself have been to a fundraiser or two at our room with Crimson Coast.
I can't recall that at all. Okay. Yes, I have.
Which is, we do a lot of fundraising for the community, and, we host all the high schools for their jazz programs and the university for their jazz programs, and, we do a lot for the community, so this endorsement is very important and, integral part of our business as well.
Okay. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you very much. You have an entertainment component to your license now.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
You're permitted to do some
live music. Live music, dance.
So is it the transport of beverage from one room to another that is the issue?
No, it's the transport from person to stage. If we have an open mic night, which is we host every Wednesday night, and we have people in the audience that are waiting to go up, and we use the the open mic night for almost like an audition night to hire
Karaoke.
entertainers. So for them to leave their dining table and go to the stage, that's what it's all about basically. We're not a dance bar or dance club or.
That sounds pretty silly.
Yeah. It's,
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I like the idea of endorsing local talent, and all of my colleagues here are very much aware of the fact that Diana Krall made her start as a pianist in the bar in the Coast Bastion Hotel. So, I think
NHL, yeah.
Yeah, and the Nanaimo Harbour Lights as well. So. And look where she is today.
Yeah, exactly. We've put a lot of people through our lounge, and we hire probably 600 to 800 entertainers from Nanaimo locally a year, and we don't hire out of Nanaimo. We keep it local. Ladysmith would be the furthest away that we actually hire our entertainers.
We have a ton of talent.
Yeah.
I might just make the observation that Councillor Johnstone herself is a singer, so, but there's no conflict that I can see. Anyway, thank you very much. I see no further questions. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
The next delegation is Mr. Michael Parker. Mr. Parker, are you present? Again, sir, you have up to 10 minutes. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council members. My name is Michael Parker of 2147 Caledonia Avenue, owner of proposed Project 13 Haliburton Street. Here to speak briefly tonight regarding 13 Haliburton Street. After I finish speaking, Douglas Hardy, President of the South End Community Association, will speak, after which we will both be available to answer any questions. I would like to say that we have city staff support. Our project promotes affordable housing. We meet the goals and objectives of the OCP and the South End Community Plan, have strong community and business support, and contribute positively to revitalization of the downtown Nanaimo area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I see no questions. Thank you very much for your time. And the next delegation is Mr. Douglas Hardy.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Douglas Hardy, 32 Gillespie Street. I'm chair of the South End Community Association, and I'm here this evening to add our support to Mr. Parker's application. We had an opportunity to discuss his application and the design and concept at a couple of our meetings, and it received very strong support from our members. We thought it was a particularly creative design. We liked the architectural aesthetic. We appreciated that it seemed to fall into line with our neighbourhood plan that we were engaged with at the time in terms of the kinds of housing options we'd like to see develop in our community with the goal of increasing density. So we were very positive about this development. I'm happy to support it.
Okay, I see some at least one question, but I might just mention this is the South End Neighbourhood Plan, and I must say I found it to be a very impressive document. I know the city had a strong role to play along with the South End Neighbourhood Association, and I think the finished document is very impressive indeed and very professional. And I've often held the South End out without any intent to be critical of any other community group. But the South End group I have a great deal of admiration and respect for, because when there is an issue or a problem, instead of saying, what are you going to do about it, they roll up their sleeves and take on the task themselves, asking only for guidance and suggestions from the city and staff. And I can tell you, as mayor, I certainly appreciate the approach, and I think anyone who takes the time to drive through the South End area and to see the very impressive changes that have taken place there will also be impressed. And we want to thank you for that. Having said that, Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Evening, Mr. Hardy. Just one question. Not so long ago, well, at least sometime this year, your South End Community Association had a pretty significant tree planting event along Haliburton. In this application, it talks about a parking bay in front of the property. Does that require the removal of any trees that were planted? And if so, does your organization have no problem with that?
Actually, I'm not clear what the technical implications of that parking bay would be in relation to the trees. You're right, that was the first block in a sort of series of planting projects along Halliburton Street, and we're certainly proud of those trees. So.
The reason I'm asking is that quite some time ago now, some of us, 5 or 6, congregated in front of 13 Halliburton, and there were trees, and so I have the idea that some of them might have to come out. And as long as you're okay with that, then I'm okay.
Yeah, as I say, I'm not clear yet what the implications of that option would be. So.
Thanks.
Okay, I see no further questions on that. Thank you very much, Mr. Hardy. The next delegation is Mr. Bill Ballant, sorry?
Mr. Hardy was coming over the south end. He was supportive of the other application.
Okay, but didn't we hear both delegations though?
Yeah. He's got a second application.
Okay, Mr. Hardy, you have another go at it here then? Sorry, I just assumed you'd come up as a second part there.
Well, you rather, with your kind comments, rather preempted my.
Yes, it was. That was
my spiel on the neighbourhood plan. And,
sorry, I didn't. I just assumed that maybe you were doing it together as one item, but these are two separate ones, and I apologize for that.
But very much appreciated comments, and if I may just add our congratulations to Councillor McNabb and appreciation. I know Deverell Square Park has seen a terrific investment of money on behalf of the city, and we really appreciate what's changed in that park and your contribution to it, and many other things in the South End. So thank you. Yes, I just wanted briefly to acknowledge that tonight's quite a significant marker for us in terms of our neighbourhood planning process. It's coming before you this evening for first reading, and I'm here on behalf of the South End Community Association and also on behalf of the steering committee that worked with continues to work with city staff through the development of this planning process, and also a number of colleagues from the South End community are present here as well. And we're really here to say just how proud and excited we are that we've got to this stage in the process. The formal part of the planning process has been unfolding over the past year. But really, we've been working towards this plan for a number of years in the community. You kindly acknowledge the work of our association over a number of years to really try to bring together residents in the South End, to engage folks in issues that matter to us in the South End, and to work towards change. And part of that process has been advocating for a plan such as this, and we've been very, very excited to be part of it. I know the city staff spent a lot of time thinking about planning processes and how to do that, and I really wanted to pay tribute and express our appreciation for the process that's unfolded. It's been a very inclusive, truly a collaborative process between ourselves and city staff. I know that that's the intent of a good planning process, and I think our experience has really borne that out, and I think that is great credit to the community planning team as a whole. And in particular, I'd like to say a big thank you to Chris Schulberg, who's been the point person who's sort of shepherded our plan through and just shown terrific skill as a facilitator in the process. We really appreciate his contribution. And in the traditions of great planning, he's a guy who really knows our neighbourhood and our community, and we've had a relationship that's built with him and members of his team over a number of years. So that's worked really well. I'd also like to say a quick thank you to Rebecca Tubbs, who's provided administrative assistance to the process and helped draft the numerous drafts that we've looked at, and that's been no small achievement because there's a lot of information to bring together, and we thank her for that too. So it's been a great process. There's been a lot of residents have participated in that. We've had a number of open houses and numerous opportunities for folks to share their vision for the South End, to be heard and to have their thoughts and ideas sort of integrated into this plan. So, yeah, we're here really just to cheer the process on. We're excited. We've got it before you. We look forward to your comments and questions and any debate that may arise from it. We see it as a starting point in some ways. It describes a vision for our neighbourhood over the next 20, 30 years. The hard work is realising that, and I think the process has strengthened our community. So we're really excited to move forward with the plan and appreciate your attention to it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Hardy, we have a couple of questions. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you again, Mr. Hardy. As you know, I've kept a pretty close eye on the proceedings, and I think it would behoove us as a council to thank you again, plus your South End Community Association executive, and indeed everybody in the South End. It's been absolutely wonderful to see the turnouts at the public hearings, the charrettes, all the open events that people could express and take part in. You know, our OCP does state that neighbourhoods and valid neighbourhood plans are the building bricks of our municipal society, and the South End is getting one heck of a brick, so thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Worship. Phenomenal document. Having grown up at 12 Halliburton Street and lived in 645 and the Fry Street house in the front, you've done a phenomenal job. The committee, SECA, the things that you do, you waited a long time. It took lots of years, 12, 14 years to put it together. I hope we can complete the sheets at the end, the blue sheets, and tick off a whole bunch that's completed before 20 years is up. I want to see it completed. It does a phenomenal job of representing the South End. Great job.
Thank you very much.
I see no further questions. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Hardy. Moved and second, all in favor? Oh, it's carried. Now, Mr. Belland, unfortunately, we didn't turn off your timer, so you're out of... No, come forward. Now, you have up to 10 minutes.
Mayor and Council, my name is Bill Belland. I live at 73 Robart Street in downtown Nanaimo, and I too would like to say thank you to Councillor McNabb for his years of service. On the agenda this evening is an application to increase the capacity of Level 2 nightclub at 170 Skinner Street. The reason the application is being made at this time is because when the original drawings were submitted to the city, the usable floor space was determined to be 1,511 square feet and the capacity set at 148 persons. This is the information that was submitted to the city and to the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch in Victoria, and the license was approved for that occupancy. At a later date, I hired DYS Architecture to take over the project from the original architect. After reviewing the floor plans, DYS determined that the floor space was not 1,511 square feet, but was actually 1,711 square feet. This would have allowed an occupancy of 173 persons, 25 more than the amount submitted for the liquor license. After discussions with the architect and the contractor, I decided not to reapply for the increase at that time. It has been a year now, and I'm therefore making this application. I've met with the RCMP and the Downtown Business Association. Both organizations are in support of this application. Letters from both organizations are part of a staff report this evening. The letters speak to the way Level 2 is managed and how it is viewed by both the RCMP and the Downtown Business Association. I gratefully ask for your support with this application. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I see a couple of questions. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Evening, Mr. Belland. Just to make it very short and succinct,
yes, sir.
If no mistake had been made by the first architect that you hired for your project, you would have had 172 seats by now.
That is the application I would have made, yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Councillor Unger.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Belland, as a member of the Bar Watch for the City of Nanaimo, working with the RCMP and the city bylaws, and also as co-chair of the Safer Nanaimo Working Group with Councillor Patchy, and formerly with the Downtown Partnership. The reports we've been getting back from the day you opened until the present time have been absolutely nothing but good, and I would like to see that we get reports from all drinking establishments that could match up to yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Belland. I see no further questions, and this matter will come up later in the agenda.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Move receipt of the delegation.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Under proclamations, we have two proclamations. That 2010 October 3 to 2010 October 9 is Fire Prevention Week in the city of Nanaimo. And that 2010 October 18 to 2010 October 24th is National Waste Reduction Week in the city of Nanaimo. Moving into Parks, Recreation and Culture Commission, which is on the top of page 3 for those with the agenda. Commission report: the Council approved the application for a travel assistance grant for the Nanaimo Blind Bowls in the amount of $200. The application meets all grant criteria.
So moved.
Moved. Seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Matters carried. It's unanimous. And we move into item C, minutes of the Parks, Recreation and Culture Commission meeting held 2010, July 28. Commission recommendation the Council receive the minutes of the report.
So moved.
Moved. Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Committee reports. Grants Advisory Committee, 2010 Grants Advisory Committee recommendation. The recommendation is the Council award a permissive tax exemption to PTE 02, the Nanaimo Region John Howard Society, cash in lieu of 2010 taxes for property it recently acquired at 961 Halliburton Street in the amount of $2,253.69. It's moved. Seconder. Moved and seconded. I see no discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Matter carried. Minutes of the Grants Advisory Committee meeting held 2010 August 18th. The Council received the minutes. Okay, and seconder, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Grants, Transportation Advisory Committee, Parking Management Study, Committee recommendation that Council, 1, establish resident-only parking within 500 meters of Vancouver Island University, VIU, if VIU is unable to implement a transportation/parking plan that meets the expectations of the city and impacted residents in a timely manner, and 2, endorse city staff participation in VIU's transportation demand management planning and its implementation. Move the recommendation and seconded. Okay, I see Councillor Bestwick for discussion.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just item number 1, I certainly support, obviously, the city staff participation in the transportation demand management parking plan and implementation. My question is item 1, residents in a timely manner. Impacted residents. Could you please, the question to staff, could you just please identify what a timely manner may define?
Go ahead, Mr. Swaby.
Your Worship, Councillor Bestwick, we would anticipate to certainly report back before the next term starts for VIU to identify how we've proceeded with options that are available with the university.
So next term meaning the January?
That's correct.
Term, and then so we would report back with anticipation to have a proposed plan or an implemented plan for the second semester.
To report back on any options that are available that the university can assist with in terms of alleviating the parking issues, or with proceeding with restrictions on parking on the streets.
Thank you.
Councillor Oldham.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the tone of the first recommendation is important. If you read it one way, it appears like we're almost laying down a requirement. But if you read it another way, it's to try to share the responsibility with the Vancouver Island University for the parking issue. We need to protect the interests of residents. That's our concern. They need to provide parking for their students or provide alternatives to car access to the university. Or they need to do some rescheduling of their classes so that there's not so much of a conflict at the interface between the university and our community. So I'm hoping that both the university and our citizens will understand this to be an encouraging kind of motion that we're making. We want to collaborate on the solution to this issue.
Okay, I might just point out, if I could, that I know our senior staff has worked very closely with the senior staff of VIU on this very matter, and I think there's goodwill and a hopeful solution on both sides. But for my part, I'm concerned that, and it's been brought up before, about the needs of the residents in that area. And there are situations where, because of the parking from the students, residents are unable to get repairmen to come in, service repairmen for furnaces and whatnot. So they have rights, and we need to address the whole picture. So we're hopeful that a resolution will come at the earliest time, and there's always the possibility that UPass may help direct that and assist in that direction too. Councillor Sherry.
To you, Mr. Chairman, in order to identify the area that's being recommended within this 500 meters, when will the city be installing residential parking signs only to identify these areas?
Your Worship, the plan would be that we would explore options with VIU before that happens. We would come back to Council before the term starts and talk about whether any of those solutions will have any effect in the next term and whether we need to proceed with any restrictions on parking. But we're not doing that at this time. We'll be back to talk to Council.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that's not satisfactory to me, because we need to send the message. We need to identify the areas where they are. As to where the residential parking only. And it's only when we go down to Milton Street, case in point, it wasn't until we established the signs along the side of the road that I identified residential parking only that we received support from those that were abusing the area, because they had to move on to another place. And to wait until December or January of next year, we're back to the same spot, and we haven't solved or sent the message out to identify what we're talking about. So I'm disappointed that we're not, in fact, being proactive in identifying the area.
Okay, thank you. I see no further questions. The matters before us has been moved and seconded. We'll call the questions on it. All those in favor? Opposed? Can't pass. Oh, you're opposed? I'm sorry.
The way the recommendation is we're not going to do anything. So, thank you.
Okay. So, Councillor Sherry is opposed. Balanced Council in favour. The motion passes. Over page to 4, Community Safety and Development, DVP 637 at 13 Halliburton Street. Staff recommendation that Council 1 issue DVP 637 at 13 Halliburton Street with the following variances. A front yard variance of 2.5 meters or 8.2 feet, a side yard setback north and south property line variance of 1.5 meters or 4.9 feet, a rear yard setback variance of 4.5 meters or 14.76 feet, and a parking variance of 3 stalls. Subject to the development permit not being issued until the following have been secured. Firstly, a 5-year rental housing agreement for 3 of the units. Secondly, a covenant requiring construction of a 2-vehicle on-street parking bay. And finally, a 5-year commitment to rent 3 off-site parking stalls. And 2, authorize the General Manager of Community Safety and Development to execute the development permit and upon security of the housing development and covenant, housing agreement and covenant. And 3, receive the report pertaining to Housing Agreement Bylaw 2010 number 7115, which appears under the bylaw section of the agenda.
Move the staff recommendations.
Moved and seconded. I see no discussion. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Sorry? Yeah. Now DVP 156, which... Sorry?
Your Worship, I think that was...
The one that you brought forward? Yes. Okay, sorry. And what number is that one that we're bringing forward? And, sorry, the
It's item 13F on page 9.
13F is what I was looking for, okay. And that the sign amendment bylaw 2010 number 7081 to permit an LED animated sign be adopted. And so that one's being brought forward. So let's, do we want to start by having someone make a motion to put it on the floor? Okay, is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Discussion. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Well, I will not belabor the same facts that took me a long time 2 weeks ago to get across, but I do want to draw your attention to a number of things, not the least of which is Mr. Bromwich's delegation this evening, which speaks about scale, it speaks about a long-established vision that we have in the OCP. He spoke about things being out of context. Next, something came to our attention that we did not have the last time around, which is a communication from the Provincial Ministry of Highways, which reads, among other things, that the ministry has stated that it is not supportive of this type of signage adjacent to ministry highways, as there is evidence that LED animated signs are an unsafe distraction to drivers. I think that's a very important communication that some of us may not have taken into consideration 2 weeks ago. The third item that I want to refer to is an unsolicited communication from our very own design advisory panel, which reads, the panel had the opportunity to discuss this matter and collectively would like to convey that it strongly opposes the use of both overheight pylon signs and LED signage. It is our opinion that if Council chooses to support the Boston Pizza signage proposal, precedents will be set that could open the door to allow this type of advertising to permeate our city. And that brings me to the conclusion, once again, Your Worship, that I really believe that we as a Council really don't know nearly enough of what we should be knowing before we adopt this bylaw, which has had 3 readings so far. And so I think it is important that we listen to the Ministry of Transportation, that we come up with some sort of solution that will take care of that particular objection. Where this is planned to be in the case of Boston Pizza is on 19A, which is a provincial highway. And I could think of some other places, established corridors where the same might be applicable. And finally, I'll just draw your attention again to what I considered a good move by the City of North Vancouver, which allowed LED signage, but did not permit it on Lonsdale Avenue, their main commercial corridor, for exactly the same reasons that the provincial ministry talks about. The safety of our citizens involved here, and I think we need to pay some more attention and get some restrictions as to where these things can go and where they can't go. Right now it's a free-for-all citywide, and I just don't think that's sufficient. So I am going to make a motion that we send this bylaw back to staff so that we can get a better handle on the safety aspect, and that they hopefully might come up at least with some suggestions as to how we deal with that ministry concern. And I so move.
You're moving a referral motion. Is there a seconder?
Second motion.
Moved and seconded. So any questions on the referral motion first?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
It's not really a question, Your Worship. I hadn't thought of a referral myself, but actually that satisfies the concerns I have. I actually favor the LED signs. I think even as Mr. Bromwich, the delegation here tonight, admitted, there is just as much potential for creative and imaginative use of that type of signage as there is for any other kind. But I am concerned that our bylaw does not have any kind of geographic limitation. I think other communities have realized that having a free-for-all as Councillor Paggi puts it, throughout the community may not be in the best interests of the community. And when you think of Lonsdale as the biggest commercial street in North Van, I believe, and LED signs are not allowed there, I'm wondering just what we're doing, allowing them everywhere in our community. So I would like to have a chance, if it is referred back to staff and even if it's referred back to the sign committee, to see if we can get a hold of that geographic issue and make a stronger bylaw as a result. But I will be favoring it when it comes back if we can do that.
Okay. Are there any other? I've got Councillor Bestwick, Councillor Johnson. Are you wanting to speak to the referral or on the original motion?
I would like to speak.
Okay. You're on.
I'm not sure if I'm on.
You're on.
Thank you. Well, I'm just curious about when we make reference to our long-established vision, and that is why we have opportunity decade over decade, and when we review and renew our official community plans, to be able to hear from individuals, businesses, chambers, business associations, community members at large, private stakeholders, those very same people that we frankly demand and request to support our community at every opportunity. And so when I hear about our long-established visions, I think that everything that we have done in the last 2 decades, going back to the 17 or 20 years that the urban sprawl that Mr. Bromwich made reference to, the disconnect of our urban sprawl, well, we only have the opportunity to be linear. We don't have a great opportunity to be very much more than that. So our vision is going to go along our corridor. There's no question that's the heaviest populated area that we have, and that's where industrials and commercials and residentials and things are going to be established, connecting the dots with malls, as we're going to do in the South End in all likelihood, with as we move south, because there's nowhere else to move, frankly. So when I hear that the ministry has stated it's not supportive, well, the ministry of these types of signs adjacent to highways, there's a considerable sign, probably much larger in scope than this one, in Duncan. And the ministry supports overhead signs as we come north and south on the Island Highway with flashing lights that we all slow down to read to see if the Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal or Duke Point has the sailings are late or on time or overloaded or whatever they are, bombing down the highway at 100 or 100 and whatever it is, and then slowing down in the middle of a highway so I can catch what's going on at Departure Bay Ferry or Duke Point. So I find it quite contradictory in that the highways don't support such signs when, frankly, they install their own. And I have to ask the question, if I heard that this is an individual tenant request.
Okay, just for clarification, what we're dealing with here first is the sign amendment bylaw to permit LED
I'll probably
signs.
repeat this the next opportunity.
Yeah, but then we'll come back to the specific one on.
If I may just finish my last comment. So an individual business request, but if it was the mall itself, or if it was the landlord itself, as opposed to an individual tenant request, would we view this differently? Because in fact, it's a single tenant making this request, as opposed to a mall making the request, which I heard, at least what I interpreted to have heard, that we would probably consider this request differently if it was the mall.
No, I know it.
Or if it was the entire center versus an individual. So I'm quite confused by the request, A, to bring this up in the agenda, as Councillor Holden was, and B, why we have to deal with this referral.
Okay. The motion at this point, I've got 2 other speakers, is that item 13F, which is the sign amendment bylaw 2010 number 7081 to permit LED animated signs be adopted, and it's not site specific on this particular bylaw. And sorry. That's right. And so I just thought there are two other speakers. I just want to make an observation that when we did put forward this to the business community in particular, we did receive feedback from both the Nanaimo District Chamber of Commerce and also the DNBIA, and both had exceptions to the bylaw as it was presented and asked for consideration and some changes, and those changes were made. And I think that both those organizations are now supportive in principle of this thing. So having said that, I'll go on to Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. You made my point precisely. I was going to make reference to the DNB, the downtown,
DNBIA?
Yeah, and the chamber, and the changes that they requested having been put into effect. But also, I guess to clarify for the people present, the reason I asked for this to be brought forward is because it was more prudent to deal with the LED signs before we dealt with the request from the Boston Pizza to have the LED signs as one of their requests. So that was precisely why.
Okay. Councillor Sherry.
Mr. Chairman, I support the referral back because it was my understanding that the two organizations that's mentioned had concern of both size and location. And when one reads as to what's happening in other parts of the province and other parts of our country as it relates to our main thoroughfares, and how those other municipalities that are dealing with this is site-specific as it relates to your major motorways, and that which raises a concern. And the other thing is not only LED, but the animation I have concern about. And to me, that really hasn't been dealt with as yet, the animation part of the process.
Okay. Councillor Pachi, you're talking on the motion to refer?
Hey, I trust you will recall the comments that were made 2 weeks ago by Councillor Sherry when he questioned the president of the Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce on the committee and what was discussed at that committee. We still are no wiser today than we were 2 weeks ago as to what happened in that committee, what was discussed, even if this was discussed in the first place. I have my doubts. I'd like to give them the benefit of it. But that's also a point that still does not sit well with me, in that I think there's been now 2 weeks, and I think there should have been plenty of opportunity to provide us with some notes from that particular committee meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Thank you, Your Worship. Speaking in favor of the referral, I still don't think I have enough information on exactly how and where all LEDs are. We're going to spread them throughout the community. I don't know if I'm fussy about 50-foot pizzas coming up eventually. Signs they can be beautiful. They can be absolutely horribly ugly. There can be so many of them. It's just obtuse. And the considerations of safety and issues like that, I think we need more information, so I'm in favor of the referral. Thank you.
Okay, well, particularly if those pizza signs have anchovies on them, I mean, I can see where there's a problem. Okay, on the motion to refer, all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor McNabb opposed, Councillor Bestwick opposed, and Councillor Unger opposed. Balance of council in favor. The motion to refer passes. We'll move into now the main item, which we were discussing earlier, which is DVP 156 at 25779 Turner Road. And it's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to DVP 156. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to that matter?
You referred back, Your Worship?
No, that was the other one we did. This is now the pizza. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mayor of Town, City Council. My name is George Hansen. I live at 198 Garner Crescent. and I do have strong feelings on this topic. I have been on record as opposing LED signage in general in our community since consideration permitting LED signage began some 3 to 4 years ago, I think. I think this signage is visual pollution and bad design in general. And contrary to some of my business colleagues, I believe it will have a negative and not positive results for business in the long term. This variance application simply should not be approved, in my opinion. 6 or 7 years ago, I served on the Nanaimo Now committee along with Councillor Johnstone, and amongst others, when we coined the vision statement expressing that the city of Nanaimo, and I quote, aspires to be recognized as one of the most desirable, livable small cities in North America, unquote. This project was an initiative of the Economic Development Office at the time, and the concept was that this aspiration would be used as a touchstone for municipal decision-making. What would the most desirable, livable small city in North America do in this situation or in that situation? Unfortunately, the part about aspiring to be recognized was quickly dropped as more and more people in their community enthusiasm began speaking and writing that Nanaimo already was the most desirable, livable small city in North America. While we may all share a certain community pride and may easily acknowledge that the desirability of Nanaimo as a community has improved dramatically in the last 15 years, we must also acknowledge that this advancement has been achieved with a tremendous amount of public and private expense and hard work to ensure quality design and thoughtful community infrastructure. But no matter how much we may have accomplished over the last while, and no matter how many visitors may comment on how much our community has improved, our gains are fragile, and we are still a long way from being broadly recognized as one of the most desirable, livable small cities in North America. On the city's website, I recently read banner statements, quote, Nanaimo, where great ideas come to light, unquote, and, quote, Nanaimo, the city is so beautiful, it's all right to stare, unquote. Bold statements. Whether we still aspire for recognition or whether we think we have already arrived at desirability and livability, to approve this variance application would certainly not be a decision made by a city of such a desirable and livable identity, in my opinion. Approving this variance application would set a precedent for every business in every shopping centre, the full length of Terminal Avenue and the Island Highway and beyond, to ask for similar variances. The outcome of this could be to permanently undo more than a decade of improved public perception of our community. I respectfully suggest that this variance application be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I see no questions. Thank you for your time. You know, there are no questions on here. One concern I've got, and maybe staff may or may not be able to make a comment at this point. When we saw the initial drawings for a proposed sign from this Boston Pizza company, it was a freestanding sign, very tall. And I think staff, the original one was 50 feet, and I think staff came back with a recommendation that possibly a 30-foot sign might be palatable. It's my understanding now, and I can be proven otherwise, that the proponent, at least I'm now understanding, that the applicant is really desirous of having an LED animated sign with the intent, as I'm told, to sell part of it to other people in that area, and I just wondered if staff has any information on that. And if we have some incomplete information, is it appropriate to have a referral on this one? I'm not trying to pass the buck, but I want to make sure we all understand what we're dealing with here.
Your Worship, the direction that Council provided and the way that the public notification went out was that the application for the variances, which would include the LED sign as well as the other variances they requested, be subject to the proposed LED regulations, which would restrict the third-party signage. I don't have any written confirmation that the applicant would or would not like to conform to that, but I'm sure he would have been here tonight to speak more formally about that if he was concerned about that.
And presumably he's not here. But, oh, there he is, okay. But the point is, and maybe Mr. Kenny may want to maybe give us a recommendation at this point, if we've deferred the LED animated sign and referred it back to staff, are we still in a position where we can discuss approving this particular site after the sign bylaw has been referred back?
Well, as Mr. Swaby mentioned, the proviso that the terms of the bylaw would apply to the Boston Pizza sign other than the variances is that much more difficult when the bylaw is that much more delayed. So I think you're making a very good point, Your Worship, about the advisability of moving forward with that level of uncertainty.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Your Worship, I think there was someone else that wanted to approach the podium to speak about the issue.
Okay, I called earlier to see, and I just assumed you'd come down. I couldn't see you in the thing, so...
Point of order.
Yes?
I heard you say if this is referred. We voted in favor of referral, so it is being referred.
Not this one.
The LED animated sign bylaw has been referred. Yeah, and so my question was what effect would this have on the item now we're discussing, which is DVP 156? So, welcome, sir. Maybe you, traditionally we start off by having the applicant make a position here, but when you didn't step forward, we had someone else come forward and make the position. So would you like to make any comments on your application?
Yeah, the comment I'd like to make with regard to third-party advertising, where that's come from is beyond me. I had a conversation with Mr. Tucker with some clarification of some of the documentation that went out with respect to the bylaws, and then the added comments onto the bylaws below. I think for the last meeting that we had, agreed that we would adhere to any of the bylaws, although they weren't completed at this point. Any preceding bylaws that came into play, we would adhere to. And as I'd read it, it had a number of additional comments thereafter stating that we'd adhere to the bylaws, and then listed a bunch of conditions. I simply called Mr. Tucker and I said, isn't it council's wishes that we adhere to the bylaws? And that was the entire conversation. With respect to third-party advertising, I have no idea where that's come from, and I think that council's been misled if they've been told by any staff members that we were contacting with respect to...
They were not told by staff members that I'm aware of. I heard this from the public.
Okay, well, I'm not sure who you heard it from, but it's misleading and wrong.
Okay.
It was not an issue of conversation or comment at all.
Okay. Councillor Kipp. Question of the delegation?
No, that was on from before.
Okay. And Councillor Biswick, is it for this time around?
I don't have a question to the delegation, but I just have a comment that the terms and conditions of the bylaw were pretty straightforward of what the applicants would have to adhere to. So nothing has changed other than the recommendations that the Chamber and the DNBIA and so forth wish to have. And that is found inside the context of this bylaw. So I'm not sure where this confusion surrounding the LED/animation/third-party/fear mongering is coming from. We also have the ability to not permit the sign if we choose not to in the future.
I think if I can, the reason that was brought up was when we advanced from further into the agenda, that item dealing with LED signs before we heard this one, there is obviously some kind of correlation between them. I just want to make sure there wasn't something that we weren't aware of happening. Councillor Sherry.
You, Mr. Chairman, to the delegation, you identify that your current business doesn't have proper advertisement to get the view of the general public. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Had you looked at the premises from all angles, and did you let your mind roam and see where I might be able to put some signage in order, in clear view, that would catch the attention of the general public?
Yes, I did. I mean, it's not my first option to spend the great amount of money that we're required to invest, in excess of $150,000. That's something I'd rather put down on a house or a recreational vehicle or anything else other than signage. I have explored every option possible to try to avoid that expense, and it's something I take very seriously. It's something that, as a small businessman, I've had not only to sell to myself, but to my wife, my family, my employees, and it's necessary in order to maintain the survival of this business. It's something that I don't take lightly, and I don't imagine any council member or anybody in this room would take lightly, spending in excess of $150,000 for a sign, unless it was absolutely, unequivocally necessary.
Well, when one looks at there, and I go by there at least 3-4 times a week, so I'm well aware. Have you got the tower above your building, and Boston Pizza is down on the tree line, and there's plenty of space between where that sign is now and at least 3/4 of the way up that parapet or the part of the building, that a fascia sign, and that could more than accommodate your catching of the area.
That's something that we've approached with the landlord, and it's not our building. It's a shared building by many other tenants and many of the people in the complex. And the landlord has already said that that wasn't available, it wasn't possible. They've declined other tenants in the past, and it's something that we weren't able to work out with the landlord in any means whatsoever. This sign alternative was also the landlord's suggestion as well.
Well, I find it kind of strange that simple solution by raising the Boston Pizza logo and that both on the 3 sides facing the highway, because you take a look at your vegetation that's in front of in the middle of the 3 fascias that's covering up your advertisement.
I appreciate and respect your perspective, but it's something that we have explored in great detail, again, in order to avoid the significant costs involved in this sign recognition and identification at that location. Had we been able to achieve that, we would have continued to go down that avenue, and it would be a different request here at this moment. It's something that we're not able to complete. It's something that it's just not practical. We don't have the permission from the landlord or the other tenants. And this sign is what the landlord has requested as an alternative.
Okay, I find it strange that if that's what the landlord requested, it's a wonder why he's not the one that's making the application.
Because of the great expense that we have to undertake, he wasn't willing to undertake that expense himself.
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for coming forward again tonight. Mr. Bromwich earlier suggested that he had, perhaps with all of his marketing expertise, some options that he might be willing to share with you for an alternative suggestion for your signage. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to make that step.
I'm always looking at any alternative. Okay, Mr. Bromwich, I mean, as I explained the last time, when I came before council, I'm putting up the $150,000. If I'm wrong, the sign won't be there in 6 months. If Mr. Bromwich is willing to put forth that kind of commitment, I'm willing to support any suggestions Mr. Bromwich has.
Okay. And in your previous presentation, you suggested that there was a range in the height of the sign that you were requesting. It was from between 45 and 50 feet.
Absolutely.
Could you entertain even 40 feet?
We brought out a crane, and we did surveys on the property. We took the crane up to 45 feet. We took it up to 35, 45, and 50 feet. And we've taken photos and surveyed the visibility from all directions. And again, I would love to have it at 45 feet because it would save us probably about $10,000. The sign company and all parties involved at that time determined still 50 feet was the accurate height. Unfortunately, we have to spend the extra $10,000 for reinforcement to have the extra 5 feet.
Yes, I don't think there's a member amongst us that wants to see a company go sideways, and the economic development people have advised me that 6 restaurants during this economic downturn have had to close their doors. So it's a major decision and a hard one for us to make.
I can respect that as well myself. I subsidize this Boston Pizza to the tune of almost $10,000 a month. It's a hard decision I make every single month.
Okay, I see no further questions at this time, and so the question on the motion. I thought it said somebody. I thought it was moved. Okay, and you're. What is the motion? Well, we can still put it on. So, do you want to move it? The motion would be the staff recommendation that council consider the issuance of development variance permit DVP 156 at 25779 Turner Road, which appears in the agenda at the bottom, page 4.
Your Worship, a little revision.
Okay.
To change the wording that council issued on number DVP 156 at 2-5779 Turner Road.
So instead of consider the issuance, it'll just read issue?
Yes.
Well, let's...
Listen to this guy.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's first... we can't have you standing there, sir. Step up to the microphone and welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Bill McKay. My address is 2575 McCullough Road, Nanaimo. I've been working with Mr. Mercier on this sign application. There was a survey conducted, as you well know, of 357 people relative to this application. The survey asked, are you familiar with the route from Woodgrove Centre to Nanaimo North, Highway 19A? 100% claimed they were very familiar. 91% could pinpoint on a map the location of the Cactus Club, which is across the street from the Boston Pizza. Of those people, only 34% could name where the Boston Pizza was in Nanaimo. If that doesn't tell you that it needs increased visibility, I don't know what does. Mr. Mercier advises that he attempted to come to some sort of compromise with his landlord relative to putting signage on the clock tower. For the same reasons that Mr. Bromwich suggested, he was not allowed to because that is a common building owned by or used by a number of tenants, and that would be unfair. This LED sign is intended to replace a reader track. An option for this type of signage would be a Boston Pizza sign with a multi-line reader track on it. As staff has pointed out in one of their reports, such as with Piper's Pub, that sign they've permitted to be changed on a daily basis. That's 365 changes per year. This sign can be changed 365 times per day. It's the reader track of the 21st century. Nobody has to get up on ladders to change things. It's readable and it can be entertaining as well. As Mr. Mercier said, we looked at all options relative to height, and it's the topography and the geography of the location that requires it to be at 50 feet. He would have loved to have had it down to 40 or 45, but as our survey indicated last week, that didn't work. The design is permitted by bylaw. Now, one thing that Mr. Bromwich had suggested was that he would have never allowed this if he was still principal of the owners that owned that complex, and I would agree that we wouldn't be here today because Mr. Mercier would never have signed a lease under those conditions unless he could get better visibility for the restaurant. We have to remember that this is the 5th operator here. It's estimated that over $9 million has been spent to try to keep this business going over the past 10 or 11 years. And he's asking to spend another $150,000. Councillor Patchy made reference to the moth letter. I'm absolutely I can't tell you how miffed I am that after this went to third reading, that staff would then go out to solicit comments from authorities such as the Ministry of Transportation and Highways. The ministry has already weighed in on this issue of LED signs during the LED debate that, by the way, has been going on for 4 years now. I read a report from Toby Seward that was dated March of 2008, and it refers back to the initial report back in 18 months prior. Oh my God, we've been dealing with this LED sign issue since 2006. So, as far as Moth, they have weighed in already. And I'd like to point out that this very building, the end of this building, affronts Highway 19A. Are we suggesting that after spending $200,000 for the sign on the end of this building, that we're now going to, is somebody going to put a motion forward that it be removed because there might be a traffic safety issue? I'm miffed that staff would go out after it's gone to third reading to seek negative comment. The design review panel have known about LEDs all along. They say in their own letter that they have nothing to do with signs specifically. However, they strongly oppose. Where's that coming from? No wonder we're having such trouble trying to attract business. So basically that's it. As I said, Moth has already weighed in. So to use that as a reason to go to referral, why would we do that? We've been dealing with this since 2006, 4 years now.
Okay, before you go, Councillor Becci, is there a question for this?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry to hear that you're miffed. However, the staff report that we have states on the bottom of page 72, unfortunately, the ministry's comment was not received in time to be included in staff's 2010 September 13 report to council. So it's not the case that staff went out afterwards to solicit something from the Ministry of Transport. Having said that, I really would be interested in your reaction to what we have from the ministry. They're talking about safety. Does that mean anything to you or does it not?
It certainly does. In one line, they talk about safety. One line. They give no documentation, no reports, nothing. Zero. One line. I mean, the whole letter is only about 3 lines long. And as I said, if you go through the mountains of documents that we've seen relative to the LED sign issue since it first came up 4 years ago, you will find documents from the Ministry of Transportation and Highways.
Well, I beg to differ with you. I sat on the first signage committee that was struck after the last election, so that's about 2 years ago. And we did talk about the problems that could be accompanied by traffic distraction. I want to point out to you in the letter of the ministry dated September the 10th, 2010, it says there is evidence that these types of signs are an unsafe distraction to drivers. And I don't believe for a minute that the Ministry of Transportation would lie about having evidence or not.
There's certainly been lots of conjecture, there's been lots of theory. Perhaps they would have liked to have submitted a report with that letter. Again, I ask the question, are we intending to take the sign down on the end of this building if we're all concerned about traffic safety? That was a $200,000 investment.
I'd be prepared to have a dam.
Anyway, we're going to deal only with issues related to 5779 Turner Road, okay? Anything else you want to add? I see no further questions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else want to speak to the matters related to this 5779 Turner Road before we go? Okay. Okay, and the motion that you moved, and which has already been seconded, I believe, was that the actual recommendation is that council issue development variance permit DVP 156 at 25779 Turner Road. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we have that in our very diligent staff. Thank you.
So,
question?
No,
you had something else? Oh, Councillor Holden, please go ahead.
Your Worship, I've been waiting very patiently to have an opportunity to debate the motion.
Okay.
And this is our first opportunity to debate this motion on the variance. And I just, since we looked at it before, where we sent it off for review. We've received a number of documents. One is the Ministry of Transportation's Ministry of Transportation's letter. It came in as part of the process by which we try to get input on variances. That's just part of the process. They happened to respond this time. We received correspondence from the chair of the design panel on page 293 of our agenda, in which he says he's strongly opposed for design reasons to this particular variance. We've got a letter from on our green sheets, on page 296.1 of our green sheets, from a resident across the street who believes that it will be that it will interfere with her. And we've had the two delegations tonight that are saying that they're strongly opposed to this kind of signage, especially at this location. So we have some new evidence. That's why we have this process, so that there is opportunity for people to say how they feel about things that are before us. When we look at the staff report, they identify that this variance is really has three facets to it. One is that the request is for a second freestanding sign on the Island Highway Road frontage. The bylaw allows for one, so that's a variance. And that is a troublesome one because, as the applicant said, he said, if I'm right, and if I'm wrong and I've wasted my $150,000, I take down the sign. I look at it the other way. If he's right and he attracts business using that sign, then everybody will want them and we'll have a forest of them, and the bylaw goes by the boards. So that's the first issue about whether we want a second freestanding sign on the Island Highway Road frontage. I'm not strong on this, but I'd prefer not to. We have a second variance, and that is that the applicant wants an overheight freestanding sign that's 50 feet high. This too is a variance from the bylaw, considerably higher than the bylaw would allow. And finally, it's only the third item that has occupied a lot of our time, which is an animated LED sign up to 100 square feet in area, in an area other than specified in Schedule A of the sign bylaw. So this would have been a variance even to the sign bylaw if we had passed it, is the way I understand this. But in any event, we can certainly consider this whether we've referred the sign bylaw or not. This is a variance to what we have now as a sign bylaw, to have an LED sign. The trouble is that one of the reasons we referred the sign bylaw back is that we may have some concerns about where we're going to allow them within the community. If those concerns come to be, then putting them along the higher speed highway, not downtown at 50K, but along number one at 80K, and in a strip where we want traffic to flow freely. If there's a concern there, I'm not sure, but if there is, then this may be the very kind of location where we don't want them, even if we allow them everywhere else in the community. This may be the one street where we say, no, we don't want them here. I understand the argument about somebody saying, I'm putting up the money, so why shouldn't I be able to do what I want? Well, that's what we're here for. We're supposed to be here to protect community standards. It's standards that the rest of the community have also invested in. Might not be as much, but they're anticipating and expecting that those standards will be upheld, and they may be making investment decisions on the basis of that. For all those reasons, I can't support this variance, and I'll be voting against it.
Okay, I just want to point out one thing, and actually Councillor Oldham alluded to it, that it's on that page 71 of blue, and that says that there's three items under it. The Council at its regular meeting of 2010, September 13, directed staff to proceed with the statutory notification process DVP 156, which is the one we're talking about right now, number 25779 Turn Road for a variance, which, if approved, will allow the three following bullets. And the very bottom bullet of the three says an animated LED sign up to 100 square feet or 9.2 meters in an area other than specified in Schedule A of the bylaw. So that's where this reference came to earlier that I referred to about an animated or LED sign. And they said, well, it's never been discussed at that site. But in fact, it has been. And that's where, if we do approve it, that may then come to fruition. And I don't know if that's really what we want. Councillor Unger.
Thank you, Your Worship. Much has been made about having a second pylon sign on one property. And I'm just looking at a picture here that clearly shows that the adjoining property right next door has two very large pylon signs on it. That's the Northridge Plaza. So the precedent is there. Just the fact that somebody else wants to do it is not precedent setting. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sherry.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's correct, Councillor Unger, right off the bat, is that we have one pylon sign as it relates to Turner Road and one as it relates to the Island Highway 19A on the northern property. As indicated in the brochure that we received before, there is one on the highway sign as it relates to this property in question, closer down the road from where there is. And if one goes on to Turner Road, you'll find there's a second one further up the road, that they're not both at the same corner to give the appearance of two at one site. They're facing two different roads, which is allowed under the bylaw. Now, that's to correct that. Now, the problem that I have with this here, and when I asked the proprietor about moving the sign up that clock tower, well, if he wanted to move the signage that is being requested to the top of the pylon on that tower, no doubt the property owner wouldn't allow that size of sign. But there's a sign there which goes across that clock tower now, but at a lower elevation. And if they moved that up and made it into a circle type of thing with the Boston Pizza up there, that would at least bring the attention to those that don't know where it is now. Now, and the last time, the LED portion of the signage is supposed to be 100 square feet or thereabout, close to it under the metric deal. But it was also identified that the total signage overall is in excess of 300 square feet, which was on both sides would have totaled over 600 square feet. So there's more than just the 100 square foot message there. Now, I think one needs to look at that and gauge that, and to take into consideration what we've received from information from the general public and the community, that I can't support the request.
Okay, just wait 1 sec. You okay for a sec here?
Yeah, I want to get the road.
Okay, Councillor Bestwick.
Well, I'm sorry, Larry, but I just do have to get a couple of words in here. We are considering 3 variances with respect to this DVP. When I listened that the property to its north has 2 signs, one of which we suggest, claim, or theorize that it's facing Turner Road and not Highway 19A, is absolutely incorrect, because it's quite evident and obvious when you look at it where those signs face. And in fact, if there's two-way traffic, I would probably suggest, to the point of 100 square feet of LED animation, that you probably would put signs on both sides. That would make sense to me. If this applicant was a multi-tenant application, we would be talking about 5 feet, a 5-foot variance. That's what this applicant is asking for. If it's an independent applicant, then clearly the variance request is somewhat greater than that. The LED animated sign can change every 6 or 7 or 8 seconds. And for those of us that have traveled further than Lonsdale Avenue in Vancouver, you can go over the Second Narrows Bridge, you can go over the bridge at the Fraser Valley, you can go under the water on the way to the border, and at every turn for the last, since 1994, there are signs, much higher LED animated signs in those high traffic, high volume locations. They are put there for an obvious reason by independent landlords and or multi-tenant venues to draw the necessary attention to your business so that people know that are passing through the most livable, desirable city in North America to stop here for a bite to eat. Now, earlier this evening, when a gentleman came from a food and beverage establishment to ask to be able to have entertainment in his smaller establishment and indicated that he believes that he loses $10,000 per month, I heard a gasp up here, and that, oh my God, for something as simple as being able to have interaction in your venue. I am challenged the fact that this has been an ongoing process for 4 years. It's been an ongoing process as long as I've sat on council. We have 2 signs freestanding on the north and south end of the city that are much larger than this one. We have Schedule A that permits LED signs now. I would love nothing more than to see an LED sign placed on the Port Theatre so I know what's playing, so I know what it is, so I know who's coming, so I know how much tickets are, so I know what the next event is. And I'd love if one of those things that flashed up every 7 seconds said, the most livable, desirable small city in North America, and said, the next 7 seconds, it's amazing what you can do here, and said in the next 7 seconds, stop and look what you can see here. I would love it if it said those things that we so much advocate for when it's appropriate to advocate for it when it suits our specific and or particular objective. I'm wondering whether we are a nuclear-free zone. I'm really wondering if it should be a sign-free zone. Just eliminate all signs so that we really welcome business, and we really want to attract people to our city to do business here. When I hear people say that they want this, or they think it is, and people say that it's the most livable, desirable city, I hear things like it's the most difficult city to do business in. I hear that. I hear that somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 70% of our economic driver comes from those people that pay business taxes in this city. The same people that we say, come on here and do business, employ 50, 60, 80, 100 people, because we're the most livable, desirable city, and we'd like you to live here and buy houses and pay taxes. And now we're going to simply turn a business, frankly, away for the 5th time, in all likelihood. I would love to drive down Bowen Road and see what event is going on at Bevan Park. I'd love to see that. It wouldn't bother me if it was a Clipper game. How we can't think that technology in the 21st century is different than driving through Nanoose and going, that's nice. Or driving to the ferry in Victoria, that's nice. And some of the signs, pylons that we have in this city, and we don't want something that is professional. I'm hearing the design panel review doesn't like the design. Where have they been? Your Worship, this is extremely discerning for me to attract and maintain business to our city. We did this to Stewart Avenue, a business known as Sierra, and we're going to do it again. And how long we're going to spend another 4 years working on the sign bylaw. If we don't make a statement, take a position, and see if this, in fact, is so bad.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted a clarification on that. They're allowed 2 freestanding signs as long as it represents the greater mall and the whole context of the mall, not individual. Am I correct? Through the staff?
Your Worship, the mall, the regulations for malls allow for up to 3 freestanding signs, 1 per road frontage. And in fact, the Turner Road frontage signs are close enough that they appear to be on the Island Highway side, but they are part of the Turner Road frontage approval, of which Longwood has one as well.
Facing the highway.
Thank you. That answered my question.
Councillor Johnson.
Yes, Your Worship. Nobody has made the point tonight that the delegation or the applicant has made in the past that this Boston Pizza is the only Boston Pizza in the chain, in the entire chain, that doesn't have their own freestanding sign. So I would suggest that, we have to make amends.
Okay, I see no further questions, and I think it's time we moved along with a decision on this thing. So the question on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Yeah, well, maybe we should just wait to see how he's going to do this. Okay, so now, Councillor McNabb, we're going to be voting on the issue. So I'll call it the new vote now that Councillor McNabb is present here, and once again ask all those in favor of the staff recommendation to issue a development permit. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it passes.
Just a correction, Mr. Chairman. It's not staff are recommended, it's council, the majority of council that are issuing the development variance. Not
as amended by Councillor Unger. So opposed, it would be Councillor Patchy. We're going to have, Councillor Kipp. Councillor Oldham, were you opposed to it? And Councillor Sherry. Balance the council in favor, so the motion passes. Okay, you got to vote? Yeah. Okay, take care. Are you okay? Thank you.
Good years will do for you.
And maybe, Ms. Harrison, you might remind us that we have the plaque is behind me, and we want to make sure it doesn't get overlooked. Okay, moving along to top page 5, DVP 157, 990 Milton Street. It's requested that council or anyone wishing to speak with respect to DVP 157. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to speak to that matter? Okay.
The staff recommendation.
There's the delegation coming down. Sir, we need your name and address first.
My name is David Jameson. I'm here on behalf of the property owners at 162 Irwin Street, Cindy Boothby and Gary Jameson.
Well, we're dealing with, we're dealing with 990 Milton. Is this what you're talking
99 Milton.
Okay.
I don't know if, does council have both these copies in front of them? This is the letter that was sent to us. We're the only persons, for some reason, on the block that got this copy. This is a description of the home, and then this is. You have that? Okay. We just wanted to point out that 162 Irwin faces 990. It's the only house that faces them, and also so there's 3 lots that face Irwin Street, 162. And the reason we're opposed to what's going on there is they want to increase the actual home to lot size from 63.5%, and if you can see the little writing here, they want to increase it to the home to lot size to 94.7%. And so once you take the overhang of the actual roof, you're actually going to be left with maybe 3.5% of the lot left for green space, and that's just unacceptable. The house that's there right now was burnt out 6 months ago, so it's just a burnt house that's just standing there now. And they also want to increase the floor space from 890 feet to 1,884 feet. And for what's going on in our neighborhood, we have nice open spaces in that neighborhood, and then for this house to go on this corner lot and take up the whole lot with no green space left, and their backyard window, the window on their house is going to be 6 feet from our fence, and there's just no green space there. You won't be able to have children play in that lot or anything, and that's why we're opposed to this house. It's just taking up too much of the actual area of the yard, the lot.
I just wondered if staff has a comment on that at all?
Your Worship, page 3 identifies the setbacks that the applicant is requesting. And it's a corner lot, so the flanking yard setback, which is the setback of the house to the corner road, is 4 meters, which is 13 feet. And a 1.5 meter or 5 foot side yard setback is required from the interior lot line. So I'm not sure I'm following the applicant. The actual FAR or lot coverage is still, it's not 90%. It's just increasing the amount that can be built by 94 square meters, but the actual floor area ratio is still at 0.47.
No, it's not. It's
0.87. So he's right, it is a small lot and it's a larger house, but staff still believe there's...
Just let him finish first, okay?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Staff still believe there is livable yards that would be available and appropriate setbacks.
Okay. Now, you had some more comments to add to it?
Yes. See, the FAR is the actual livable space inside the house, inside the walls. Mm-hmm. Now, once you take out the width of the walls, you take out you actually put out the porches that they're going to have, 2 on the front and your porch on the back and your overhang. The actual lot is going to be 5.3 of that lot, percent of that total area of the lot is all that's going to be left for grass or for runoff from the roof to contain water, whatever they have there. That's just not acceptable in that neighborhood.
Okay. Just we have one question for you before you go. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Question to staff. The southwest corner of opposite 990 Milton Street, that's a park, is it not? The gentleman referred to a lack of green space.
Yes.
Sorry?
Yes.
Thank you. Any comment? Okay. Thank you. Okay, sir. I see no further questions. Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to speak to matters related to 990 Milton Street?
Good evening. My name is Sydney Robertson. I live at 167 Irwin Street. My front window looks out on the house, on the property in question. I actually am very supportive of the development. I know the lot. I know that it's a tiny lot and a very difficult lot to build on. And frankly, my concern has been that we would either be looking out at a burned out shell of a building for God knows how long, or at another vacant lot, yet another vacant lot in our neighborhood with a chain link fence around it for God knows how long. So I would like to strongly encourage the developers to use something like hardy plank or siding on the building, very much in tune with what we're asking for in our neighborhood plan. Other than that, I'd be quite happy to look out on the building as presented.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to matters related to DVP 157 and 990 Milton Street? Okay. Seeing none. Is there a recommendation? Okay. Seconder?
Second motion.
Moved and seconded?
Just a question, Your Worship.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question to staff. So with the square footage of the decks and so on and so forth, was the first delegation you think accurate in his descript that 5% or less of the actual property would be left or available for green space? And if so, is that what is our criteria for green space?
Your Worship, the actual, just to start, it is a very small lot, and so any house is going to appear to be larger than on any other lot we have in the city. But I'm not sure of the delegation's calculations whether they're correct or not. But the floor area of the house doesn't change the percentage that's covered on the lot, if you can understand what I mean. It's no different than any other house in terms of the percentage that it would cover on the lot.
So the porches then?
But he's correct, I'm sure, that there is very little space left over, and that's just typical of small lot development.
So the porches factor into the square footage of the house, or they don't?
No, they don't. Not typically if they're not enclosed by a roof, if they're open deck or patio space, no. So it's going to depend on how they construct it.
And if there is a roof line over the porch?
If it's included, it would be included in the floor area ratio of the lot. So it would be included in how you would decide how big a house could be built on the lot.
And it would only be included if it was covered, if the porch was literally covered in, or just
yes,
a roof but open?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no further questions on the motion, which has been moved and seconded. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We're going into DVP 158 at number 3114 Gibraltar Rock. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to DVP 158 at 114 Gibraltar Rock. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to that? Seeing none, if somebody would like to make the motion. Moved. Okay, seconder. Moved and second. I see no questions. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll move into DVP 159 at 9 Nickel Street. Staff recommendation the council direct staff to proceed with the required statutory notification for development variance permit DVP 159 at 9 Nickel Street. Okay, there is a question. Moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. For discussion, Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. 2 or 3 quick questions to staff on this, if I may. This is a relatively small portion of Port Place Mall, is it not? It's at the corner of Nickel and, what would you call it? Esplanade? Okay. Esplanade. All right. That being the case, the report talks about the advantage of having signs on this hoarding, which will be treated in one way or another to be anti or graffiti proof, I should say, which is great. But it does make me question why 2 of these signs then are on a chain link fence that would conceivably make it easier to have graffiti.
Well, that's Sure. Thank you, through your worship. The applicant has provided board hoarding, so plywood hoarding, adjacent to the pedestrian sidewalk that's adjacent to the site, and chain link fence around the remainder. Understand it's related to safety of pedestrians in proximity to the site under building code. Building code stipulates that they use plywood hoarding adjacent to pedestrian facilities. And as far as the signage, the applicant would like to screen part of the site with signage to identify what's going on the larger mall project. But as well, they need to maintain some visibility for security purposes through the chain link.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Yes, it does, Mr. Holm. Thank you. It does leave me to wonder, though, that on a relatively small portion, we're going to have what turns out to be 5 large signs, 4 26 by 8 and 1 24 by 8. Isn't that a bit overkill?
Well, Your Worship, that's certainly the issue for council to debate. Staff is taking the lead of many of the projects in Vancouver where the entire blocks are surrounded by these, and it's our position that the plain plywood, this is a better solution temporarily to have advertising.
Okay. And finally, Your Worship, how long would this be up, this signage?
My understanding is that it'll be up for no more than 1 year. It will be the duration of construction to the point that the site is safe and no longer needs to be screened, or pedestrians are no longer requiring protection from on-site activities. My understanding is in the range of 6 to 7 months, but likely not longer than a year.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Holm.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. We'll move into LA 56. Oh, okay. LA 56, application for structural change for level 2 at 170 Skinner Street. Staff recommendation: the council recommend the Liquor Control and Licensee Branch LCLB approve the application to increase the license capacity for the level 2 nightclub from 148 to 173 persons. Moved. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. LA's 58, entertainment endorsement for a food primary liquor license for the Red Room Grill at 75 Front Street. Staff recommendation: the council recommend the Liquor Control and Licensee Branch LCLB approve the application to allow patrons participation entertainment with a food primary licensed area, attachment B of the Red Room Grill. Moved, seconded, moved and seconded. I see no questions. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll go into RA 252, part of 5547 Noy Road. Staff recommendation that Council 1 receive the report pertaining to zoning amendment bylaw 2010 number 4000.488, which is presented under the bylaw section of the agenda, and 2, direct staff to secure the following prior to adoption of the bylaw should Council support the bylaw at third reading. A covenant registered to secure density of lots 1, 7, and 11, and B, rainwater pre-development flows and community contribution.
Recommendations
1 and 2. Is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Seconded.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Councillor Bestwick.
Just a question to staff. What do we anticipate the community contribution to be?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
The community.
What is the contribution?
5,000.
Is it 5,000?
And we arrived at that.
Pardon me?
That was voluntary?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Come on, you guys. Let's settle down here. We've been at this too long. So, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're going to go into RA 253 at 340 Poets Trail Drive. Staff recommendation that Council 1 receive the report pertaining to zoning amendment bylaw 2010 number 4000.489, which is presented under the bylaw section of the agenda, and 2, direct staff to secure the following prior to adoption of the bylaw should Council support the bylaw at the third reading. A, street trees. B, no gating. C, rainwater pre-development flows. D, community contribution, and E, an erosion and sediment control plan.
Move items 1 and 2.
Second. 1 and 2. Second the motion. I see no. Councillor Batchy.
Just a quick question to staff. Is there a bylaw that prevents gating in this city?
Yes.
Yeah, the official community plan contains policy that discourages gated communities.
Then why do we need to have an additional way to secure no gating?
It strengthens policy is exactly that. This provides a legal mechanism to restrict gating.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So I see no other questions on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll go into RA 254 at 4085 Salal Drive. Staff recommendation that Council receive the report pertaining to zoning amendment bylaw, which is misspelled, 2010 number 4000.490, which is presented under the bylaw section of the agenda. Anyone like to move that?
Move to receive the report.
Okay. And second, I see no questions. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The South End Neighbourhood Plan, PNAC's recommendation that Council consider approving the South End Neighbourhood Plan as an amendment to the City of Nanaimo Official Community Plan OCP 2008 number 6500. And I guess there's a second part here. The staff recommendation that Council receive the report pertaining to the Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw 2010 number 6500.012, which is presented in the bylaw section of the agenda. Do you want to separate them?
I'd like to move the staff recommendation only.
Okay.
PNAC's recommendation refers to the
different issue.
That comes up later.
Okay. So you want to deal with the second part, which is the staff recommendation? You've moved that. Is there a second? Moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Do you want to do PNAC? You're suggesting now? Okay. And licensing and control of animals amendment bylaw. Staff recommendation that Council receive the report pertaining to the licensing and control of animals amendment bylaw number 2010-4923.07, which is presented in the bylaw section of the agenda.
Move to receive the report.
Second. Moved and seconded. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Unsightly premises, the first one appropriate is Dearborn Place. 1810 Dearborn Place. It's requested that Council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to unsightly premises at 1810 Dearborn Place. Staff recommendation that Council, pursuant to Property Maintenance Bylaw 1990, number 3704, and amendments thereto, direct the owners of 1810 Dearborn Place to remove discarded metal, plastic, cardboard, machinery, and miscellaneous debris from the premises within 14 days, or the work will be undertaken by the city's agents at the owner's cost. I see, would someone like to move?
Move the staff recommendation.
Second. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll move on to unsightly premises at 108 Halliburton Street. It's requested that Council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to unsightly premises at 108 Halliburton Street. And the staff recommendation that Council, pursuant to the Property Maintenance Bylaw 1990, number 3704, and amendments thereto, direct the owners of 108 Halliburton Street to remove the overgrown blackberry bushes, garbage, and miscellaneous debris from the premises within 14 days, or the work will be undertaken by the city's agent at the owner's cost.
Move the staff recommendation.
Second. I see no questions. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Unsightly premises 147 Halliburton Street. It's requested that Council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to unsightly premises at 147 Halliburton Street. Anyone here for that? The staff recommendation that Council, pursuant to the Property Maintenance Bylaw 1990, number 3704, and amendments thereto, direct the owners of 147 Halliburton Street to remove discarded wood, furniture, plastics, garden clippings, garbage, and miscellaneous debris from the premises within 14 days, or the work will be undertaken by the city's agent at the owner's cost.
Move the staff recommendation.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Unsightly premises 540 Milton Street. It's requested the Council hear anyone wishing to speak to with respect to unsightly premises at 540 Milton Street. Anyone present for that site? The same recommendation that Council, pursuant to the Property Maintenance Bylaw 1990, number 3704, and minutes thereto, direct the owners of 540 Milton Street to remove graffiti from the premises within 14 days. The work will be undertaken by the city agent at the owner's cost.
Move the staff recommendation.
Is there a seconder? Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next item on Sandpiper Place has been pulled. We'll go into a nuisance property at 564 5th Street. It's requested that Council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to the nuisance property at 564 5th Street. Council recommendation that the Council declare 564 5th Street a nuisance pursuant to nuisance abatement and cost recovery bylaw 2003 number 5645, and authorize staff to record and charge for municipal services, including police, required at this property to abate the nuisances. Okay? Go ahead, sir. We just need your name and address and your interest in the property.
Thank you. I am the son, and with me is my brother. My father is the owner of that property.
And your name, sir, and your address is what we need.
Right. My address is 415 West Vancouver, British Columbia.
Okay.
And your name? My name is Harvey, Harvi Greywall, Grewal. Okay. And with me is my brother and also the managers of that property. We have been working with the police and with members of the city with respect to improving that building. We had problems, admittedly, with poor management shortly after we took over the building 4 years ago, in particular a manager. And unfortunately what happened was a lot of the tenants that the building seemed to attract were lower income people who essentially were troublemakers or led very troubled lives. It's been very difficult evicting some of these people. We've had to go through the residential tenancy process, etc. But we have made progress in that regard, and I'm happy to report that there's really only 2 problem tenants left, and we're hopeful to actually one of them will be evicted probably this week, and and then what will remain is just one. That's a problem. The actual call responses to that building, I think, have gone down over the last year, and like I said, we've got new management in place, and we're hoping to further improve, or actually, we expect that the call volumes to the police will further decline. What we're really seeking is another 3 to 4 months to show you that we have turned this building around and that we plan on making it a better building, improving the building, and working with the city on improving the building. It was when we took over the building, it was difficult because, like I say, a lot of the tenants there are lower income and tended to have just higher incidences of crime. But we want to make it better. We want to improve that situation.
Okay, let me just ask some questions first.
Sure.
How long has your family owned? Your father, I understand, owns the property. How long has he owned it?
4 years.
4 years, okay.
Yes.
And how much communication you've had with our senior staff concerning this and Mr. Churchill with bylaw?
Well, my brother has had extensive dealings with the city. Every time that we're called by the city to deal with a property, we respond. And I think my brother's been working closely with the city along with the managers of the building, the new managers of the building.
Okay, maybe I could ask staff now, that maybe Mr. Churchill or whoever wants to respond. Have the number of complaints been reduced? Is this still going to be a problem? And what kind of communication and discussion have you had with the applicants here? Because it always seems to me that there must be solutions available before you come to this last-minute solution. And I'm just sort of always surprised that these aren't discussed in detail with staff before you come to us, because this is an 11th-hour appeal, and it's rather difficult for us with the background that we're aware of. And before you answer, I'd like to hear from Mr. Churchill. Is this a problem been ongoing? And how much communication has the family had with you in recent times to resolve these issues?
Yes, the family has actually had meetings with bylaw staff and with the RCMP starting in the beginning of the year. This property in particular has an occurrence rate for calls for service of around 124 so far in 2010. We compared this to other similar properties.
Sorry, 124?
124 nuisance calls.
How many days have we gone through here? That means it's almost one a day on average?
Mm-hmm. We compared this to other properties with the same demographics.
One every other day.
And what we had is about 2 of the properties we looked at had 22 calls for service, another had 18. So this property is generating 4 to 5 times the call for policing service of others of similar demographics. We've worked with the property owner since the beginning of the year. I think it's Mr. Bill Grewal. He did make some progress with some of residential tenancy, doing some evictions. But what we've seen is a wavering in the management of the facility throughout this year, so the problems have continued. Almost in all cases where we deal with properties like this, it needs hands-on management, someone who's there to deal with the issues on a daily basis to address the tendencies that are causing problems to the surrounding neighborhood, and we just haven't been able to get there with this particular property and this particular owner.
Okay, let me make a point for you at the state thing. I just want to explain something first to you, just so you understand that the city of Nanaimo and all the taxpayers, there's some 86,000 involved in the city, are paying 90% of the police costs, 90%. And so when they are expected, when the police are expected to respond to a call every second day, why should the taxpayers of Nanaimo pay for that? Excuse me.
Well, they shouldn't.
They shouldn't, is right. But frankly, they're not going to. And the point is that at this time, I would have suggested that you could have negotiated some kind of an arrangement with the city prior to this. But I'm very uncomfortable if you've had a call out of the police every second day, which is inexcusable. And the point is, by passing this, the city taxpayers no longer will bear the burden of the cost. You will. And that's, to me, only fair. Why should the taxpayers pay for your mistakes?
Sir, we are improving this condition.
I understand that.
We want to work with the city on making this a better building.
I understand that too.
All I'm asking for is a little more time to finish the job that we've started. There was some issues with management.
Are you prepared to pay the cost of police calls to your property from this day on?
No, I'm a taxpayer.
Well, if you can't, we're not going to be able to assist you. We're not going to be continuing to pay police costs, very, very expensive police costs.
But we pay property tax, sir.
Don't we all?
Right? Now, what I'm hoping...
So just let me ask you, this is a good point. That's a very good point. So you pay taxes. Now, if you pay taxes and the neighbor a block away had calls out from the police every second day, would you not say, hey, wait a minute, that's my tax dollars that guy's using up?
Actually, it's every third day, if you look at
whatever the math is, it's still unacceptable.
But look, sir.
Thank you for the input. That was very valuable.
We want to fix this problem. We really do. We're taxpayers. We want to give a chance to turn this building around. It's a low-income building. There's some problem tenants. We've had a heck of a time working through the Residential Tenancy Act to remove these tenants. We want to make that a better building. We want to be good citizens of this city. We want to improve that whole neighborhood. We want to work with you guys.
Okay.
It's not always easy hiring the right management.
You've had 4 years, though, have you?
Pardon me?
You've had 4 years, is that correct?
Well, I've got the right people. Well, the first couple of years, I understand.
I understand you've owned the building for 4 years. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
But I don't think there was a problem the first 2 years that we owned it. We had a manager that was not a good manager, and it took us a while to get rid of him as well. We've got a better management system in place. It's going to be better. It's going to be improved. And we just don't think it's fair to simply impose on us the burden of all the policing costs there, because...
Well, this is the reason I suggested you deal with staff first, because once you reach this point, it's the 11th hour. We have a couple of questions for you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. I'm acutely aware of this property and from being a Harewood boy. And just a question, you really wish to improve this property and be good corporate citizens, and you really want to improve the situation. Do you have, and I trust you're a businessman, do you have a business plan in which you're going to invest into this property and not just simply a new management style or a new manager or managers?
Absolutely.
Do you have, and have you presented to staff, a business plan to invest into the upgrades of the property? That's question number one. Number two, is there a rodent problem at this particular property?
Well, I'll deal with your... Is that the two questions?
For now.
Okay. The first question, there is a plan, and the first part of the plan was to remove problem tenants, and we are seeing to that right now. We have 2 problem tenants left, and we will have them removed. These problem tenants were the ones that were attracting most of the attention of the police.
Thank you. So are you willing, in your business plan, to have any capital investment into the upgrade of that property? And if so, what is it?
Yes, we are going to make capital improvements in that building, and we are currently doing that as well. That includes renovating the suites, improving the suites, making them better places to live, making the building a generally better building. Like I said, we had problems with 15 tenants. And through the Residential Tenancy Act, you have to go through processes to remove these tenants. Like I said, we have 2 problem tenants left. And I'm confident that when those problem tenants have been evicted, there's going to be a dramatic improvement in the environment of that building. we have 7 empty suites right now that we're not filling. They're vacant, and they're vacant because we want to improve them. We want to upgrade them. We want to make them better buildings, more desirable buildings, so we can attract better tenants. And we don't want to be in situations like this where we're dealing with the city and you guys.
When do you intend to upgrade those 7 vacant?
How do we intend to do that?
When? It could be.
We're doing that right now.
So you have contractors on site, you have people working there right now?
Well, we have a manager here who's got know-how in the area. Well, I don't want to talk about that. No, we are making improvements. We are spending money on that building, and we do have a business plan in place.
Thank you.
I mean, that's why part of the reason why we're here, and we are willing.
My question: you have a business plan in place. Thank you.
Okay, maybe could I just ask staff? Could staff maybe just walk us through what the implication of this is if this is passed? If it's declared a nuisance abatement and cost recovery under the cost recovery bylaw and so on, are we dealing with police calls, or what other issues are affected by this?
So if a call were to originate from any of the premises that address and it be not a nuisance activity but a legitimate requirement for service, there are no costs. But if it's deemed that the management could have taken an action that would have prevented that by dealing with a problem tenant that's causing issues there, that's causing disturbances, disturbing the peace of others, and didn't take action, then that would become a chargeable cost. That bill would be forwarded to the city, and the hourly wages that are incurred by the police and attending are then billed to the property owner.
Okay, and I guess what I'm really looking for here, Mr. Churchill, is there any other implications if this is passed? Are they simply involved with simply paying the police costs, which is not insignificant, I'm suggesting, but are there any other, or is it simply just the police costs?
No, it'd also be other city services. It could be bylaw services or fire, but usually predominantly it is policing costs that result in attendance there by city officials and as a result cost the taxpayer.
Okay, I asked the question just so the delegation could understand what the implication of this being passed would be. I see Councillor Bestwick, I think you've spoken, so we're going into Councillor Unger.
Thank you, Your Worship. You said you're going to upgrade the 7 suites where that work has started. Have you got building permits and gone through the proper procedure for upgrading of anything?
Okay. I'm Bill Graywell, one of the sons. What we mean by that is like we're redoing the flooring, like laminate flooring, and then repainting everything, redoing the rugs and what have you.
Yeah, let me just interrupt you.
Putting in new
The question was, have you got a building permit?
No, not thus far, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We haven't needed one, so.
Okay. Councillor Kipp.
That was my question about permits and the work.
Okay, no further comments from staff? Councillor Kipp, did you have a follow-up? Okay, so let's just move ahead with this thing. The motion on the... Sorry, is there anything else you want to add to this? Nope. Okay. So the motion is the staff recommendation that council declare that address, 564 5th Street, a nuisance pursuant to nuisance abatement and cost recovery bylaw 2003 number 5645, and authorize staff to record and charge for municipal services, including police required of this property to abate the nuisances.
Move the recommendation.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded. I see no questions. All those in favour? Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen.
Does that mean it's going to be declared as such?
It is. That's correct.
Now, is there anything we can do to appeal this in the future?
Well, you'll have to deal with staff on that. That's at a later date if it can be done. That's why I said to you at the very beginning, these things are better resolved with staff before you come here, because once you come here, this is the 11th hour and very seldom does it go your way.
Well, can I deal
Sorry? Not now. It's been passed.
Well, I know it's been passed, but I just have a question.
I think if you want to talk with staff, I think you would go to City Hall tomorrow morning and start discussion. And Mr. Church will probably see you outside.
Thank you.
Okay, unresolved building deficiencies, notice untitled section 5.7. It's requested that Councillor Heron wishing to speak with respect to unresolved building deficiencies or illegal suites at 22 Captain Kidd's Terrace. Anyone here on that?
Move the staff recommendation.
Okay, and second? Okay, all those in favour? Opposed? Council carried unanimously. We'll go into information items. Report from Mr. Churchill, Manager, Bylaw, Regulation and Security, Resident Parking at 300 Milton Street. And B, report from Ms. E.N. Anderson, Manager of Revenue Services, RE 2010 tax sale.
Move receipt of the information only items.
Second. Okay. All those in favor? And is there any questions related to 12A, Mr. Churchill's report?
Well, I was going to ask him a question, but he's not.
Oh, Mr. Churchill is MIA, is he? Oh, I think he's speaking to the last delegation.
That's all right.
Okay, and then anything to do with the report from Ms. Anderson? I think what her report deals with the fact that there was a tax sale and any of the unresolved ones were actually secured by the city. There is no other third party involved in it, and that'll give the advantage for those people that have those properties under challenge another year to make restitution to the city. Now, reconsideration. It's time to turn this over to Councillor Paggi for reconsideration of bylaws.
Thank you, Worship. It's moved that
Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 4000.484, RA 240, 5619 Westdale Road to rezone the subject property from single-family residential zone RS1 to residential duplex zone RM1 in order to facilitate construction of a duplex be adopted.
Is there a seconder? Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
The Traffic and Highways Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 5000.039, general text amendments be adopted.
Seconded. Is there a seconder? Okay. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Unanimous.
The Parks, Recreation and Culture Commission Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 720.02, to increase the Cultural Committee membership by one member from the Parks, Recreation and Culture Commission be adopted.
Second motion.
Second motion. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carried. Unanimous.
That Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 7041.01, to add fees for a nightclub security system refund be adopted.
Moved and seconded. All those in favour? Opposed?
The Parks, Recreation and Culture Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 7073.04, to remove the Breckenboat Ramp Annual Parking Pass section from Schedule B be adopted.
Seconder?
Second motion.
What are you doing?
Wait to vote, man.
All those in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously. The next item, F, has been pulled, so we've already dealt with that. We'll go into G.
The Garbage and Recyclables Collection Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 7089.02, to specify the bylaw to apply to collection routes A, B, C, and D only, be adopted.
Moved and seconded. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried.
The Property Tax Exemption Bylaw 2010, number 7107, to exempt certain lands from taxation, be adopted.
Seconder? Moved and seconded. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Municipal Solid Waste, routes E and F, Collection Bylaw 2010, number 7112, to establish garbage, food waste, recyclables, and other solid waste disposal for collection routes E and F be adopted.
Seconder, all those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Is it your route? I'm surprised you didn't move it right away. Is that a conflict of interest? It was asked. Introduction of bylaws.
That Licensing and Control of Animals Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 4923.07, to amend the bylaw with respect to deer and feral rabbits, pass first reading.
Moved and seconded. I see no discussion. All in favour? Opposed?
That Animals Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 4923.07, pass second reading.
Seconded. All those in favour? Opposed?
That the same amendment bylaw pass third reading.
All those in favour? Opposed? Carried.
That Housing Agreement Bylaw 2010, number 7115, DP 637, 13 Halliburton Street, to enter into a housing agreement for a 5-year rental commitment for 3 units of a 6-unit multifamily housing development, pass first reading.
Second. Moved and seconded. I see no question. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried.
That Housing Agreement Bylaw 2010, number 7115, pass second reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And that the same bylaw 2010 number 7115 pass third reading.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Introduction of development bylaws.
Thank you, Your Worship. That zoning amendment bylaw 2010 number 4000.488, RA 252, part of 5547 Noy Road, to rezone part of the subject property from single-family residential zone RS1 to residential duplex zone RM1 and residential triplex and quadruplex zone RM2 in order to include additional density within an approved subdivision, pass first reading.
Is there a seconder? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
The zoning amendment bylaw 2010 4000.488 pass second reading.
Second, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
That zoning amendment bylaw 2010 number 4000.489, RA 253-340 Poets Trail Drive, to rezone the subject property from single-family residential zone RS1 to low-density multiple-family residential townhouse zone RM3 in order to facilitate construction of a multi-family development, pass first reading.
Is there a seconder? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
That zoning amendment bylaw 2010 number 4000.489 pass second reading.
Second, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
That zoning amendment bylaw 2010 number 4000.490, RA 254 Salal Drive, to rezone the subject property from low-density multiple-family residential townhouse zone RM3 to single-family residential zone RS1 in order to facilitate subdivision of single-family lots, pass first reading.
Seconder? Moved and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Zoning amendment bylaw 2010 number 4000.490 pass second reading.
Seconder? Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
That official community plan amendment bylaw 2010 number 6500.012 OCP 52 to include the South End neighbourhood plan within the official community plan, pass first reading.
Seconder? All those in favor?
Just a moment.
Sorry, I don't see there. Let's get a seconder on it anyway, just to see. Okay, and now we'll discussion. Go ahead.
Just quickly, Your Worship, this was received by the Plan Nanaimo Advisory Committee, which is recommending approval of the amendment to the official community plan. And I just want to say that this document received by PNAC, the South End Neighbourhood Plan, is simply a marvelous document. It provides both encouragement and focus for what the residents would like to see happen there. It's got a good sense of history, and yet it has a vision for the future. It's wonderful to read it because of the affection, the love that people have for their neighbourhood that emerges from this document. I just wanted to say that, Your Worship.
Good point. Very good point. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Your Worship, I had a little comment on that.
Oh, sorry about that.
I just wanted to say that I concur with everything that Councillor Holdham and everybody has said here. Plus, I also want to recognise the South End Community Association's very strong ability to compromise. That was absolutely wonderful to see, and without that ability to do so, we would not be where we are today. So thank you for that as well.
Actually, I'm only concerned that there might be a little bit too much praise for the South End, but no, that's not true. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. We'll go into the correspondence.
Receipt of all the correspondence.
Seconder? Moved and seconded. Well done. Okay. Any matters related to the correspondence? Okay. Letter from Ms. Grace Elliott Nielsen, as Executive Director at Tillicum Laleham Aboriginal Friendship Centre, requesting support for their request to the provincial government to establish a long-term capacity fund, LTCF, for BC Friendship Centres and to allocate $3.1 million to this fund on an annual basis.
Move that we send a letter of support.
Okay, moved and seconded. I see no further discussion. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Anyone else want to, dealing with 16A, I know there was some brief discussion about the letter from the Honourable Pat Bell, Minister of Forest and Range and Minister responsible for Integrated Land Management Bureau, requesting the Council consider adopting a Wood First resolution. I wondered, is there any appetite?
Did they send any money with it?
No, we're talking about the province of British Columbia, I'm sorry. I just wondered, does Council want to take action on this one? Okay.
Your Worship, things like this are the gifts we can't afford. They keep giving us small amounts of money and then leave our taxpayers stuck with the big portion of it. I think the water treatment plant is a classic example. It's going to cost somewhere around $68 to $70 million, and the senior governments give us $18 million, leaves us stuck for $50 million. So, as I say, this is another gift we can't afford until they can prove to us that it's not going to increase our costs. I would not support it.
Okay, I think the rest of the items are unless anyone else wants to deal with that.
Your Worship, may I ask a question of staff? We do support the Wood First resolution to a certain height standard, do we not?
Your Worship, I believe this is an invitation by the province to adopt a Wood First policy for buildings that the city itself builds. I don't think it's directly related to private sector investment, but rather public sector investment. And right now we do not have a policy requiring our own public buildings to be built from wood.
But I might just add, if I can, Mr. Kennedy, I think that the city does take into consideration the possible use of wood where we can. Example would be the aquatic centre, but we found that while wood aesthetically would be more pleasing and probably even stronger in some respects, the cost was prohibitive for the installation we chose instead. So, okay. Councillor Johnson, you finished yours?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and going down into the delegation's been pulled. Item 20 is not there, so question period for agenda items only.
Move we adjourn.
Gracious. All right.